Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy, and I'm your host, Joe Firestone. And I'm joined this evening by my good friend, Dee Pierce.
Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here, Dee. And Dee is the host of Around the World with Dee and Friends. We have a number of topics tonight. One of them is who's to blame for the latest rounds in Iran. Our second topic is Israel cries help. And then there's, uh, the question of the policy of Donald Trump. It was at first, at least, a little hard to understand. It's becoming clearer and clearer. Uh, and of
Yes.
course, there's more and more opposition to it as it becomes clearer and clearer. And then there is the topic of Iran's retaliation. We've got a particularly good piece, okay, on that. Of course, as everybody knows, when the Israelis first attacked, it was the usual thing. Oh, so great, so great, so great. But then, since then, it's like, I mean, it's all Iran. It's just all Iran. So we'll be talking about that. And then finally, there's a question of whether Trump is joining Israel or not. Of course, that's looking increasingly likely as we've come to the stream. But when I scheduled the stream, there was still a little bit of a question. I don't think there's too much of a question left, but we're still going to talk about it. Uh, so we have a number of different articles and videos for you tonight that we'll be discussing. But as usual, we'll start off with Facebook. Please do share, like, and subscribe for us because it's really important that lots of people see this. So thank you very much. And we will start off by sharing on Facebook.
Yes, that's what I'm doing. Sharing. And then also, if anybody's on X, if you could share on X as well.
That would be a big help. Yes. And even sharing on YouTube because we
Is
don't,
great too.
yeah, we don't get too many views on YouTube for some reason.
Well, a lot of people got annoyed with YouTube because of different people they really like watching and problems that YouTube had caused for, for their favorite broadcasters.
Yeah,
So,
but I think our problems with YouTube go back uh, because we originally came from Facebook.
yes.
And so we had much bigger followings on Facebook. Uh, I don't see a lot of other people having problems on YouTube, but we
Oh,
get far.
yeah, people used to have higher numbers too, they said on YouTube. And the numbers keep getting squashed, and somehow you have a lot of followers, the next minute you don't. It
Uh,
seems like, I don't know, they're playing games.
there's suppression going on YouTube.
Yes, people are annoyed at that.
Why is there suppression on YouTube?
Who knows why?
I don't know. Let's get to the first of our things. That's a video. What happened to it? I don't know. I thought I was playing a video, but let's see. Let me do this again.
Okay. I'm over on X now, Sharon.
Yeah, that's not helping.
Yeah, it doesn't help you, but I'm just mentioning
Yeah,
it's important because that's where you really get a lot of people watching is on X.
I know of late anyway. I know that's been where the largest group of people seem to be. Okay, let's see where that is. Okay. Okay, so here we are. This is a video of Alistair Crook, okay, and the judge, Napolitano. Uh, okay, and Alistair is explaining why Israel is to blame. Here we go. I thought that was a very direct sort of reply by Alistair.
Mm. Okay, we're not up yet.
We're not up yet.
No, no, I don't see the video yet.
Oh, let me see this. Can you
Oh,
see
there
this?
it is.
Can you see
Now
this?
I see it.
Okay.
Now I see him.
Okay, cool. Thank you for telling me. Okay, so here we go.
Moment. And what we saw that took place on Friday, unlucky Friday the 13th, with the attack on Iran by Israel. This was conditioned, if you like, made possible because the Witkoff and Trump and others had suggested that there would be no attack, no, if you like, military action by Israel at all, while the talks continued. There'd been a row between Netanyahu and Trump, and that Netanyahu had agreed to no attacks during this period. And of course, that was all fake. There was no actually row because they were all totally in agreement that what should happen next should be a complete shock, a psychic shock, if you like. There's a word for it that these intelligence services are using freely, which is a synergistic shock, synergy, meaning from having doing a surprise attack that took out the commanders of the military force, the line commanders, 8 of them. And also at the same time, there was a cyber attack on the air defenses. Now, I think Israel thought it was going to last a lot longer, but the Air Force technicians, the Iranian Air Force technicians, worked really hard on this. And 8 hours later, the great claims of Israel that they had an open road to the Tehran were completely overturned. And since
Okay, some people have said that the time period till they recovered was a 10-hour time period, but it certainly was a very short time, until they recovered. That said, it seems as though Israel still is making certain bombing attacks, okay, on Tehran. Uh, they certainly have not been as successful as they were on the first day, but they're still coming to Tehran. but as we'll see later, they don't seem to be nearly as devastating as the retaliation by Iran, uh, since the tricks that were played by Israel on the first day of the conflict on Friday of last week. It seems almost a lifetime since Friday because of
Oh
what's
yeah.
happening. Yeah, it seems like a long time, doesn't it, Dee?
Oh, it does. It does.
It's just the amazing display of missile power by the Iranians. Just the sheer number appears to have, simply overwhelmed the various defenses the Israelis and the United States have put up. The Iron Dome and also David's sling and the THAAD defenses, okay, and the Aegis defensive and the Arrow 1 and Arrow 2 defenses. They all seem to have been breached now, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
And we've seen very strong performance by the air defense systems of Iran. And this is also, if you like, was part of this process that not only was it supposed to be a shock, it was supposed to be such a severe shock. I think it was modeled probably on the Hezbollah model. And what was this going to do? It was actually going to collapse the regime.
How women in the 1940s lost weight.
The first ultra-processed food was Kellogg's cornflakes.
And so they thought, and clearly Trump was in this, and his team was in it because we know that this was a year in preparation. So obviously being talked about. We know it's a year in preparation because the Israelis say it was a year in preparation. The security force say it was a year in preparation, and therefore it was fully coordinated. And the other part of it, of course, which shows what's going on, was that the other part of it was they brought in to Iran various drones, broken up in trucks, wooden trucks, and we're going to play the same, if you like, playbook that they did with Russia against the strategic bombers in Russia, that these drones would suddenly emerge from the backs of vans or from roofs that opened, controlled remotely, and these would attack the self-defense system, the air defenses of Iran. Well, that play only lasted for about 8 hours. And yes, all of the commanders happened to be, there was supposed to be an exercise going to happen over the weekend. So all of those military commanders happened to be in one command room, an underground command room, at the time, and that the Israelis were aware of it. It wasn't a secret exercise. It was one with the Russians and others that was well publicized. And they got all of them, 8 of them, and then they killed, if you like, the Russian, the Iranian nuclear scientists. All of those who are civilians, not military people, were killed at home by bombing with their families. So this was supposed to really, actually knock the whole system off balance, losing their main line of command, losing their air defense, losing these scientists was supposed to create such a psychic shock that the whole of the government would be destabilized and off balance, rather as Hezbollah was off balance. And it was off balance for a period after the loss of Hassan Nasrallah and the Hezbollah leadership. And they thought then what with also the second layer of this was going to be sabotage. They introduced, from outside of the country, groups and saboteurs, mostly from the MEK, the Mujahideen al-Qaeda, into attacking and placing bombs. So many of these things that you see today are not actually fired by aircraft. These are car bombs and bombs there. However, what was
If I recall correctly, the MEK is the Kurdish group that's viewed as terroristic uh, by Turkey. They evidently have operated in Turkey for some time, and the Turks have been, seriously trying to kill them. But they operate more generally in the Kurdistan area. Okay, and Iran has a part of Kurdistan inside it. So the MEK has access to Iran in a similar way to its access to Turkey, I think.
was quite striking was that Iran recovered very quickly. It recovered its command structures quickly. It recovered its air defense system, and then
So to some degree, the Iranians had pre-planned for this kind of attack. They may not have been as alert on Friday as they would have been because the negotiations kind of lulled them to sleep. But after seeing the kind of attack that Israel had mounted against some of the allies of Iran in the Middle East, uh, um, um, uh, Hezbollah in particular, I think the Iranians understood the importance of designating successors to their top leaders. So in case of assassination, there would be people ready to step into place, okay, and take over. And I think that accounts for a lot of the quick recovery that they had.
decided and made plans for its own self-defense. So what we're seeing, I just want to underline, what we're seeing is really what has happened is a complete attack on a paradigm of thinking, on the sense of, if you like, the invulnerability of Israel as a technical giant, of Israel whose future must be assured, who has the backing of the West, that this was something that it was a perception that has underlain politics for many years. And suddenly the whole paradigm was being cracked because Iran decided that they were going to retaliate and retaliate fully, and also then put it into practice very quickly and have been doing so ever since. So this paradigm change is going to change the whole balance of politics, geopolitics, I believe, everywhere, not just in the region, but of course, Russia. If you read Ria Novosti today is saying, well, quite clearly, this was a rehearsal for us again. The tactics that we saw on the ground, with the tactics we've seen the intelligence services, the Mossad, the CIA, MI6, all of them using, they're all one pattern. And this is a pattern that is being exported and used. It's obviously something that has been deliberated on for a year or more. We saw that in the attacks on the strategic bombers in Russia. And the purpose of it is all the same. The purpose to weaken Iran, to weaken Russia, to attack Russia, to divide Russia from China, and eventually allow the United States to pivot towards China. So Russia have come very clearly to that conclusion, and so they are acting accordingly. So what does it all mean? I think, if you allow me just a few more minutes to say,
Sure.
the things that matter then, we had a surprise attack that worked for a short while. There's no doubt it was a surprise, and it took Iran was a shock to Iran. but they recovered quite quickly. So now we're in a war, and Iran is using very powerful missiles, some of them hypersonic. Initially, they were using older missiles, and then they've been advancing them. And
So when they started out, using the older missiles, of course, what that was about was using the older missiles, okay, and many of them, to get the Israeli defenses to commit uh, 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 their missiles.
Hmm.
The Iron Dome isn't actually a dome, okay? It's actually a missile system, and there are lots and lots, of anti-ballistic missiles in that system. Not only anti-ballistic missiles, but anti-rocket missiles, okay, and so on. And uh, of course, those missiles are material things. They are resources, and they are finite. And the Iranians were hitting the Israelis with lots and lots of missiles that didn't expect to be that effective in order to start to drain the
Hmm.
resources of Israel, the foundation, the basis of the Iron Dome and of the other anti-missile systems, anti-rocket systems that they had. And so the draining has been going on for a few days now: Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And later on in this stream, we will talk about the results of this draining of the resources of Israel and how it has come about in a remarkably short period of time. So let's go on.
we're seeing that effectively this has now proved that the air defenses now of Israel have been largely ineffective. The main
See this? This is a 400-ounce bar of solid gold. Back in the 20s, this could buy you a decent house.
air defense layers of Israel are just not working, are not stopping the new attacks. And they are targeting very clearly. Now it is turned, and this is a strategic shift that has been made by Iran. They're targeting strategic sites inside, including the Ministry of Defense sites, the research bureaus, the missile production facilities, some energy, the gas at Haifa, the oil refinery at Haifa. All of these have been, and the damage is now severe. So where are we? I think really, although the details of the military situation are sort of lost in a fog of war in some cases, but really one has to look at two things, I think, to decide, where it is going. And one of it is popular support. And I think that this whole exercise was based on the conviction of Trump and Netanyahu together, thinking that Iran is weak, that it is ripe for a regime change, that a big sudden shock of the decapitation, of losing its air defenses, was going to bring about a big popular uprising and antagonism against Iran. Well, that hasn't happened. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite. There's extreme anger in Iran. There are demonstrations in Iran, but they're all demonstrations against the United States and Israel. And the country has coalesced around the leadership, and the leadership has coalesced in a very significant way. And so we are seeing, therefore, a popular support, a growing popular support. In Israel, on the other hand,
So I think that's a very good analysis of what's been happening. Uh, in a very real sense, the initial Israeli surprise attack, okay, has backfired and created a great degree of anger, okay, and enmity towards the Israelis and towards the United States, who, of course, from the beginning were seen to be behind the Israelis in terms of offering them support. In other words, the planes that come over and attack them, uh, are U.S.-made aircraft, of course.
Hmm.
Okay, and I think the drones, a lot of them were U.S.-made, and the intelligence effort, of course, behind the drones. Uh, People knew fairly quickly this was a product of MI6 and the CIA, okay, and the Mossad, and uh, okay, the people in Iran know who produced this effort on the first day, okay, and they hate these people, and the hate strengthens their resistance, the hate, okay, and the anger.
Israelis perhaps have not had that history of sufferings that Iranians have had, and of forbearance and resolve. And clearly, some of the Israeli commentators and the security commentators are questioning how many days can the Israel see the situation like this, with huge destruction in Tel Aviv. I mean, that's where most of the security elements are cited, in big urban areas like Haifa or in Tel Aviv. But there are pictures and images of whole apartment blocks being knocked down, or of houses being damaged. No one knows exactly the figures. There's a complete news blackout from Israel. Almost nothing gets through in terms of the detail of what's happened. So now this is where we are. And the long answer to your question is that, first of all, the first deception was the one of Witkoff and Trump saying that on the 13th, this was Sunday, there were going to be new negotiations, and the negotiations were making progress and they were looking good. And all of that was to prepare for this, if you like, the shock attack that was thought it could actually bring down the government in Iran. But the other one, which Ronen Bergman, the prominent Israeli commentator, senior security official, is saying, is that General Michael Kurilla, throughout this period, was telling the security officials that, oh yes, it was assured America would join in. And also, not only would they join in and support Israel in this attack on Iran, but he was also suggesting that it was that America would release its mother of all bombs, the MOAB, the 11-ton bunker buster bomb that can only be carried by B-1 or B-2 American bomber, and that they would shortly be seeing all of these big bombers being sent to Diego Garcia, and that for sure the United States would be participating in the attacks on Iran.
Okay, just to mention a small point here, according to Scott Ritter, we're not even looking at 11-ton bombs. We're looking at 30,000-pound bombs,
Hmm.
which are 15 tons. I forget the number of the bomb. It's the GB something or other. And we're not looking at one bomb, but we're looking at dropping a series of bombs to drive deep into the mountains that are protecting the nuclear program of Iran. And we're probably talking about also uh, uh, the missile systems um, 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 of Iran. Okay, I have to add here, though, and I don't know what's going to happen. don't have enough information. But I think this is something to keep in mind. The B-2s, which is probably the aircraft they're going to use, or the B-1, but both of them are slow planes. They operate at 650 miles per hour. They're not like the jets that go maybe 2,000 miles per hour, 2,500 miles per hour. They're slow planes. They have to come from Diego Garcia, or they will be coming from there. That's going to take a long time. There's going to be a lot of early warning for the Iranians that they are coming. Now, these planes fly high. They fly at 50 to 60,000 feet. And they were designed to be beyond the reach of the air defense systems. But over the years, the air defense systems have been improving, and their reach has been growing. Now, the Iranians have S-400 systems as part of their air defense system, and they even have an S-500 system, of their own particular design. Now, when the Russians designed the S-400 systems, it was meant to be able to take out aircraft like the B-1s and B-2s. And these systems are likely capable of taking out that sort, of aircraft. So we don't have a lot of B-1s and B-2s. I think at most the B-2s coming, from Diego Garcia, they might send 6 or 7 over, to Iran. Okay, when they do, they'll be confronting the S-400 and S-500 systems. I think there's a good chance that a number of them are going to be blown out of the sky, and that it may be problematic for even one to get through to drop its payload. Now, the Iranian nuclear sites are spread across the country, and the missile sites are spread across the country too, in mountainous areas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many of the B-2s are going to get through. I don't know if our military has been talking about that and has been taking account of it. But what I have to say is, based on the experience in the war in Ukraine, the S-400 systems have been remarkably effective, and our military has underestimated their effectiveness and what they can do, what they could do inside of Ukraine in that environment. And we have a history of underestimating what the Russian systems can do. And we have a history of underestimating what the Iranian systems can do. In other words, we have a dim view of Iranian technology. Our military does. And I'm just trying to be as objective as possible here. But I have serious doubts, about whether the B-1s and B-2s are going to be safe. I don't know if they're going to use any B-1s. I think they mostly plan on using the B-2s. Maybe they'll supplement them with some B-52s. So these may provide some kinks in the attack plans of the United States. Now, something else that may be significant here, too, is I have a feeling the Iranians have been planning something for some time if the United States comes into the war. And that is somehow firing missiles at the Diego Garcia assets while they're still on the ground. Diego Garcia is pretty far away um, um, from the Iranian bomb sites. But if the Iranians could use some of their naval assets as missile launchers, and could get them about 1,000 miles, to within about, let's say 1,800 miles away from Diego Garcia, or 1,500 miles away, 1,200 miles away, something like that, they might be able to launch missiles to hit the Air Force
Mhm.
on the island, and we might not be ready for such an attack. I'm just saying, I think that's a possibility. Now, I am no military expert, okay, at all. And if I had Scott Ritter here, I'd put a question like that to him, or to somebody, who really knows their stuff. But I know the Iranians have been aware of the possibility of the U.S. coming into the war against them for some time. And I have respect enough for their intellectual capabilities and their scientific capabilities to think that they've been planning a surprise for the United States for some time. I think both sides are planning surprises for the other side. I think we've seen the surprise of the Israelis and the United States already. I don't know if they have any other surprises uh, um, um, up their sleeve. Now, we're seeing some Iranian surprises too. They've evidently got some missiles that were never used before that have been used to get through to Israel. In other words, some hypersonic missiles that have increased capability have already gotten through to Tel Aviv. The question is whether they've got any surprises for Diego Garcia that we haven't really seen yet. But they've known for a long time that if the United States was going to come into the war, it was going to use bombers coming from the Diego Garcia site to come to Iran. So I think it's very likely that they've planned for this and have some countermeasures in place. So I didn't want to say those few things. Okay, Dee, any comments?
No, I think you pretty much, said enough.
Okay, thanks.
I was just thinking so we could, we'll go on.
Yeah, we'll go on.
Well, that hasn't happened so far. I'm not saying it won't happen, that Trump will not join in, but I'm saying that the prospects are not clear.
Installers who frequently drill holes should try the popular Wu Steel 4-blade sawtooth drill bit. It features an interlocking sawtooth.
Because what has become absolutely apparent, as I've been saying and others on your program have been saying, Israel is just not capable of destroying the nuclear sites of Iran. They cannot do it with the equipment, the bombs that they have. It's not possible to destroy it without the United States. So without destroying the nuclear program, really, Israel is just reduced to what was always called the Dahi option, which is to go and attack civilians in Tehran. And you've heard Katz, the defense minister, saying, we'll make Tehran burn. This is the Dahi option, where you just attack civilian areas, bomb hospitals, facilities, in order to put pressure on the people to turn against their leaders. Well, it's not working so far, but there's a long way to go in this war, and so we will see what the next steps turn out to be. Sorry for such a long description.
Oh, no, no, no. Please don't be sorry. It was a brilliant and gifted, terrific, up-to-date summary of where things stand now. What kind of, there doesn't seem to be any,
This was where things stood as of, Monday morning, okay, at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'm sorry, 8 a.m. Eastern time. So we're almost 2 days away from that now. We'll talk about that later.
dispute, but that the president personally participated in the deception, the nonsense about snubbing Netanyahu, the nonsense about going to the Middle East and avoiding Israel. What damage did Donald Trump personally do to American diplomacy in the future? I mean, stated differently, who would believe anything the president or his diplomats say in negotiations if he's going to end up, we'll play the clip in a minute, killing the people with whom he's negotiating?
No, it is already obvious, and you can see this reflected directly. If you look at the statements by China and of Russia at the UN Security Council emergency meeting, and they were absolutely clear. This was illegal. It was against the UN Charter. It was against the standards of values of the diplomatic world. It was against international law, and they condemned it utterly. And this will have an impact because there's a thing under Article 51 of the United Nations, which means it's called the collective defense, and that Iran can appeal to the collective defense procedures so that countries like China, states like Russia, like Pakistan, have an absolute legitimate reason and are obliged to come to the help of Iran. So, already we've seen a Chinese cargo plane arriving in Tehran, Pakistan, and there is very strong reporting suggesting Pakistan has already sent missiles across the Baluch border into Iran to support Iran in this case. So I think that is the consequence, that there is now a complete settled position. It's going to, that China and Russia have taken such an unrelenting stand on this program is crippling for America, its credibility and its ability to do wider diplomacy.
Do we know the nature and extent of American and British planning and aid in the execution? Was it just this deceptive dance that Donald Trump perpetrated, or were MI6 and CIA seriously working with Mossad?
Yes, it's quite clear this is the new pattern of the intelligence services, this synergy that they are trying to get, of getting all branches of intelligence and sabotage and terrorism working jointly together. And this is their new pattern. I think it was some time ago they started agreeing to move to what they call an asymmetric pattern of warfare against China, against Russia, against all of its enemies. And this is the pattern that we see, and clearly it is closely coordinated between the Western intelligence services, very closely.
Do you believe the reports in the West this morning that Prime Minister Netanyahu asked President Trump for permission to assassinate the Ayatollah, and President Trump declined to give that permission? It's hard for me to believe Netanyahu asking for permission from anybody, but what's your view on this?
No, I don't think so. And it, not by Netanyahu personally, because people don't believe much what he said, but people in the security establishment in Israel. And many of them are deeply skeptical about this whole operation and deeply worried about where it's going to end up for Israel. have said very clearly, no, this never happened. I mean, there was no sense of that. I mean, of course, decapitation, including the supreme leader, would have a devastating effect in Iran. But I mean, first of all, the question is, could they do it? And is that what they would want? I mean, clearly one part of this pattern after the decapitation and the shock and the psychological shock that was being inflicted was that we've seen, all the deployment, some of whom have been captured, of Mossad agents, MEK.
This is why you shouldn't buy just one Mazzato knife. If you only buy one, you're just losing money. Add another to your order and get it for less than 20.
Officials and operatives going in and placing car bombs to pretend it was Israeli missiles that were striking Iran, when it wasn't. It was car bombs set by individuals in it. And at other parts where you've seen attacks claimed across Iran, many of those were drones, and they seem to have been drones that were being launched from the north, from Azerbaijan, in the direction of the Caspian into it. And then these are sort of projected. And as I say, we're in a fog of war, deep information war. So
Okay, just to note, okay, the Azerbaijanis are a main source of oil to Israel. They are friendly to Israel, not so friendly to Iran. So it's very believable that some of the drone attacks in the first wave actually came, from Azerbaijan.
we have to be very careful of claims. But it looks as if many of these things were actually drones with quite small warheads that were being fired from out of Azerbaijan to give the impression that Israel had a much greater reach of its airpower. In fact, it's not actually in Iranian airspace at all at these times. It has drones in the airspace, but its aircraft are mostly sitting or outside the airspace and doing standoff attacks.
So that point is a very, very important point, because previously to the attacks on Friday night, we knew that the Israeli Air Force had never penetrated the airspace of Iran. When they tried on October 26th, they failed, to penetrate, and they struck some Iranian targets from afar, with their missiles. Now, on these occasions, in these days, in recent days, it's been said that some of the Israeli aircraft, were over Iran. And perhaps they were. The Iranians claim they shot down 3 of the F-35s. We haven't seen definitive proof of that claim. And the Israelis, of course, are denying any such thing, but the Iranians say they have an Israeli pilot, which of course suggests that at least one of the F-35s were knocked down. But the overall point I'm trying to make is we don't have definitive information yet about whether Israeli aircraft were able to get into the Iranian airspace. If not too many of them have been able to get into Iranian airspace, that alone speaks to the effectiveness of the air defense, systems of Iran. I think the United States has the opinion right now that the air defense systems of Iran have been damaged severely by the attacks. And, so therefore Iran will lie pretty naked to attacks by our bombers. Okay, again, I don't think this is true, but we will see.
Where
Sounds
that's
like,
possible.
before we go, it sounds to me like the euphoria that the pro-Zionist folks manifested on Friday has dissipated.
True. Yes. And this is why suddenly there's alarm. And I'm not at all, wouldn't be at all surprised that calls going out to Trump and saying, you know, we're in a mess. And what are we going to do about it? How are we going to get out of this mess? But I don't think Iran is going to accommodate that. I think that they have moved away from strategic patience and that they are engaged now in a war to demilitarize Israel against its military structures, rather like Putin is engaged in a war to demilitarize Ukraine. So now Iran has made a decision yesterday that it is going to attack hard and it is going to demilitarize.
The number one food for regular BMs, huh? Okay, let's see.
Fastest way to clear out stuck poop is by adding more fiber.
Israel. I can't tell you if that will be successful, but that is what is intended, and I don't think they're about to back down into a truce or into some form of ceasefire, and certainly not until they have reached their objectives will there be talks again with the Americans. So this has been a big failure.
So that is an extremely important point by Al, because this is the first time we know of that the Iranians have ever had the objective of demilitarizing Israel, of using their missiles, to do that. Now, I personally have always felt that they have enough missile capability to actually demilitarize Israel. And now, I think we're seeing it. We're seeing it even more between this Monday morning interview of Alistair's and this Tuesday evening live stream of ourselves. There's a lot more evidence that what is being attempted is the demilitarization, of Israel. And there's a lot of reason to suggest that the Iranians might well be successful in demilitarizing Israel, at least in demilitarizing the Air Force, getting rid of the Air Force, getting rid of its capability to attack Iran or any other targets, as well. And that has implications, I think, for the genocide in Gaza, for the continuing capability of the Israelis to go through with the genocide on Gaza. But of course, all this is dependent on the continued success of Iran in terms of the damage that their missiles can do. Just to remark, there's evidence that their most successful missile attacks just occurred on Tuesday afternoon and evening, and that these were the heaviest missile attacks in terms of the numbers of missiles that were used. Now, some people have been giving commentary, some of the Western media saying that the Iranians are about to run out of missiles. I don't think there's any evidence at all, that they're about to run out of missiles. They're increasing the intensity and the density of their attacks as time goes on, and their latest attacks were the heaviest. So I'll go on.
Here is, before we go, Alistair, here is a clip from June 13 from your longtime friend and colleague, Professor Mohammad Marandi, who will be on the show with us at 2:00 Eastern this afternoon. Very clear, very precise, and I think very accurate. Chris, cut number one.
We were at the negotiating table. It was Trump that conspired with Netanyahu to attack Iran. This is how you twist the truth. You shouldn't invite me because you're easily exposed. Iran was negotiating. Initially, Trump had one position, and so did Witkoff. And then they flipped and said, no, enrichment. And then they continued the negotiations. And the night before the attack, Trump said that we don't want war. And then after the attack, he said, we're all for it. And you're saying Iran? Is Iran going to come back to the negotiating table? The audacity. Come on, be a bit, show at least a bit of integrity. A bit of integrity will help.
Okay.
I'm going to guess you agree with that. I mean, the evidence is manifest.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was a big gamble. It was a big gamble that they could cause a sort of a major collapse, a regime change in Iran. And it looks as if it hasn't worked. And instead of which, it is Israel itself that's coming under huge pressure. And its populace is beginning to say, where are we? What's next? Where is this leading? Are we going to lose more of our homes and more of our living standards as Tehran is, if you like, continues the attacks?
I want to play one more clip because I said that I would. Dana Bash of CNN was apparently given a brief interview with the president. I think it was on the telephone, and she wasn't permitted to record it, but she did call into her CNN colleagues immediately after the conversation she had with President Trump to report what he said. And it is in this conversation, again, unrecorded, we're going by her notes and her memory, that the president boasted that we killed.
If I died tomorrow, I'd have only one regret, not telling everyone losing their vision, including you.
The people with whom we're negotiating. Chris, cut number 12.
And then he went on to say this: Iran should have listened to me when I said, you know, I gave them, I don't know if you know this, but I gave them a 60-day warning. And today is day 61. And then he said, they, meaning Iran, should now come to the table to make a deal before it's too late. And then he said something really noteworthy. He said, the people I was dealing with are dead, the hardliners. To which I just wanted to underscore. So what you're saying is Israel has now killed the people who you were dealing with. And he said very sarcastically, they didn't die of the flu. They didn't die of COVID.
I don't know how you reply to that, Al.
Okay. Oh, what a nasty guy, right? He's just such a nasty person.
He is. That's just blatantly evil.
Such an effing, low life.
Exactly. Disgusting.
I'm sorry for all the editorializing folks. I've tried to keep a lot of editorializing out of this in terms of, of condemnation. But, I mean, when you say something like that and you exult in killing the people that you were negotiating with, supposedly in good faith, try to remember how we felt about the Japanese, negotiators who were talking to us, supposedly in good faith. And maybe they were talking in good faith because maybe they didn't know the plans, of the Japanese Navy to attack us.
Right.
Okay, but we considered them to be terribly perfidious back in 1941 before the Japanese came and attacked us. And of course, we were totally outraged. And the outrage was part of the motivation to reply in kind, to the Japanese. It was a tremendously motivating factor. I think we have to assume that our behavior in terms of the negotiations, with the Iranians is and will be a tremendously motivating factor for them in this war against us. And especially if we come in, directly now against Donald Trump. I mean, I can see Iranians writing on their missiles all kinds of messages for Donald Trump on all the missiles that they directed our air bases, in the Middle East, and all the missiles, they direct towards Israel. Anyway, I mean, this is just totally perfidious behavior, totally against all the norms, okay, of uh, uh, international law and behavior. It's the lowest kind of activity when you're starting a war with somebody. By the way, there still hasn't been any declaration of war.
No.
And I don't know if this administration is going to even try to get one before it attacks Iran.
I'll stare.
It's not worthy of a reply.
Right, right. Thank you, my dear friend.
So I supplied the reply.
You need never apologize for your lectures. They are brilliant, gifted, and nowhere else to be found. Thank you so much. We may have to call on you again this week. God only knows what's going to happen. We deeply appreciate every piece of information and analysis you've given us, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, my dear friend.
Thank you very much.
So they haven't called on him thus far, but I think it would be wonderful if they did before the week is over. Okay, so that's the first piece of ours tonight. Let us take a look at some of the replies that we have had. Oh, well, gee, it looks like we've got 580 folks here tonight.
Oh, good.
That's certainly very encouraging. So, the Earl of Laurel is here. It says, hey, guys. And Evelyn says, hello, all. And Evelyn says, yes, Dr. Joe, we figured that. Thanks for having explained this to us uh, uh, um, uh, um, months ago. Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to because I can't match 928 with what I said then since it's 10:06 now. But, regarding how the Iron Dome is overwhelmed by a barrage of missiles. Yeah, I was kind of repeating myself, but that's exactly what happened here. Shutting it down as a consequence. Evelina says, brilliant info, MOBS. One, Diego Garcia, possible use of submarines. Yes, I thought that too. Possible use of submarines, but even use of the faster boats the Iranians have. A swarm of small boats with mobile launchers on them. Daunting what is ahead, all because warmongers trampled the peace initiative. Yes, I agree. Evelina leaves some icons, which I cannot see clearly here. Robert Copes, only Israel and what the Soror is doing to each of their countries. Alistair Crook is only doing speculation, but it's pretty informed speculation. He knows the Western Asia very, very well. Very well. Evelina says, demilitarizing Israel sounds positive, even if it means extending this war alas, I don't know if they'll be successful in demilitarizing the army, but I think they may well be successful in demilitarizing the Air Force. They also may be successful in scaring a lot of the settlers out. Of course, the airport is not operating right now, but if they allow it to come into operation again, we may be seeing a lot of the settlers going home. The Earl of Laurel says, Trump kills the diplomats, immediately asks for a deal. We're in the Twilight Zone. Yeah. What a nincompoop. Earl of Laurel says, love Alistair. Yeah, I love Alistair too. He's wonderful. Okay, Dee, I'm going to put up the first of the blog posts. Would you like to go over there?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. This is the first of 3 blog posts from Larry Johnson.
Okay.
And here it is.
Okay. The Zionists are crying. Quote, Uncle Sam, 14 June 2025. By Larry C. Johnson.
Isn't that a beautiful building?
Yeah. The Weizmann Institute for Science in Rehovot, a prominent Israeli research center, has sustained damage in Iran's latest missile barrage. Israel's initial euphoria over its Friday morning strikes on Iranian targets is fading, as Israel inhabitants get a taste of their own medicine. Israel's much touted Iron Dome is a total bust. I have posted a couple of videos below that show the Iranian missiles arriving unimpeded.
Okay, note that this blog post was as of June 14th. So already by the 14th, which was Saturday, okay, there was already a failure of the Iron Dome, going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, please go on, D.
In his latest video, Borskman reports that the Iranian strike yesterday on the IDF version of the Pentagon destroyed a THAAD air defense system that was deployed to, quote, protect the building.
Now, the THAADs, those particular defense systems, were supposedly able to knock down uh, um, some of the ballistic missiles while they were, still outside the atmosphere. Still, okay, I think the defense system wasn't successful in protecting itself.
Nope, it wasn't.
So that is very, very important. I'm not going to play the video here. Okay, please go on.
Pepe Escobar was interviewed earlier today by Nima and provided some important news from his impeccable Russian sources. Israel, with help from the West, hit Iran with a cyber attack early Friday morning, Tehran time, that disabled Iran's defense system. Israel and the West anticipated this would disable Iran's ability to track and attack inbound missiles for several days. According to Pepe, Iranian technicians got the system up and running in 10 hours. The Potemkin village propaganda generated by Israel and spread by the Western media is coming apart at the seams. While many in the West still believe that Israel has struck a fatal blow on Iran and that Iran is just days away from collapse, the Iranian missile force is alive and well and bombing the shit out of Israel.
Yeah,
I
there's Larry. He lays it right out there.
Exactly. I suspect that Iran is employing Houthi tactics with their ballistic missiles that are fired from the mobile launches, i.e., instead of relying on fixed sites, Iran is deploying its missiles around the country on mobile launches, which are virtually impossible to detect and destroy in a timely manner. As I write this, Iran reportedly has launched an 8-wave of missiles. Iran is going to engage Israel in a tit-for-tat battle until Israel ceases its attack on Iran. The following reports from Axios is indicative of Israeli panic. Israel has asked the Trump administration over the past 48 hours to join the war with Iran in order to eliminate its nuclear program, according to 2 Israeli officials. The following videos highlight the problem confronting Israel. It can't stop.
Okay, I'm not going to play the videos because
Yeah.
videos like this are all around.
Yes. Another reality confronting Israel is that the United States does not have unlimited supplies of air defense missiles and other weapons to send to Israel. For example, consider the limitations of the THAAD and SM-3 anti-ballistic missile systems. The U.S. can only manufacture 50 to 75 THAAD and 60 to 84 SM-3 interceptors per year. I read another report today, can't find it now, that the U.S. is sending weapons intended for Ukraine to Israel. I'm sure Zelensky will be thrilled with that news. If this report is true, Ukraine's days are numbered. Without sustained U.S. military and intelligence support, Ukraine cannot sustain its military operations through the summer.
Okay, so let's sort of consider for a minute, if we're talking 50 to 75 of the THAAD missiles and 60 to 84 of the SM-3 interceptors per year, then that kind of contribution, even a full year contribution for each of these, is facing thousands of the missiles and drones that have already been fired at Iran in the now what is it, the fifth day of the war. I think the Iranians have reached at least 3,000 to 4,000 missiles and drones. They have fired it, at the Israelis. Of course, besides the THAAD missiles, okay, we also have, the Iron Dome missiles to consider. And we also have the David Sling missiles and the Arrow 1 and Arrow 2 and stuff like that. But still, you can see that the weight of the numbers of the Iranian missiles are overwhelming the available missiles that exist in the anti-missile systems. So the Israelis have to be running short of those. And that's why, as you see some of the videos from today, I mean, you can see videos where the ballistic missiles are coming into Tel Aviv or coming into Haifa, or coming into wherever else, and none of the ABMs are rising to stop them. You don't see the ABMs. It's not that they're missing the missiles. They're now not even contesting the missiles. So it means the Israelis, in some of their anti-missile systems, they're simply running out of interceptor missiles to use. They're already running out of the interceptor missiles to use. Okay, please continue.
Without sustained U.S. military and intelligence support, Ukraine cannot sustain its military operations throughout the summer. I want to remind you of a strategic partnership agreement that Russia and Iran signed on January 17th. Here are the critical sections pertaining to the agreement. Article 3. 3. In the event that either contracting party is subject to aggression, the other contracting partner shall not provide any military or other assistance to the aggressor which would contribute to the continued aggression, and shall help to ensure that the differences that have arisen are settled on the basis of the United Nations Charter and other applicable rules of international law. So, what does this mean? The right to self-defense is recognized in Article 51 of the UN Charter, which allows countries to defend themselves if an armed attack occurs. This self-defense must be in response to an actual armed attack, immediate and necessary, proportional to the threat. Israel's attack on Iranian nuclear facilities under the terms of this agreement means that Iran, with Russian support, will be fully entitled to respond militarily. Russia sent Israel and the United States a clear warning. Russia has Iran's back. Article 4 is particularly revealing because it admits that Russia and Iran have separate agreements governing cooperation between their respective intelligence and security agencies. Article 4, Number 2. The intelligence and security agencies of the contracting parties shall cooperate with the framework of separate agreements. Article 5 reveals that Russia and Iran have agreed to a comprehensive level of military cooperation that covers everything from training to military exercises to responding to attacks. Article 5, Number 1, in order to develop military cooperation between their relevant agencies, the contracting parties shall conduct the preparation and implementation of respective agreements within the working group on military cooperation. Number 2, the military cooperation between the contracting parties shall cover a wide range of issues, including the exchange of military and expert delegations, port calls by military ships and vessels of the contracting parties, training of military personnel, exchange of cadets and instructors, participation upon the agreement between the contracting parties, in international defense exhibitions hosted by the contracting parties, conduct of joint sports competitions, cultural and other events, joint maritime relief and rescue operations, as well as combating piracy and armed robbery at sea. Number 3, the contracting party shall interact closely in holding joint military exercises in the territory of both contracting parties and beyond by mutual consent and taking into account the applicable generally recognized rules of international law. Number 4, the contracting parties shall consult and cooperate in countering common military and security threats of a bilateral and regional nature. Donald Trump came into office with the backing of millions of voters who believed his promise not to embroil the U.S. in needless foreign wars. Looks like he is breaking that promise. He apparently learned nothing from George H.W. Bush, who promised, quote, no new taxes, and then broke that promise. Voters did not forgive him. If Trump intervenes on behalf of Israel, he will likely suffer a similar political fate. Only instead of not being reelected, he will see his political support among a key segment of his base crumble.
Yep.
And we're already seeing it.
We are already seeing it. A well-known guy named Dave Smith, okay, who's a libertarian commentator and was an early supporter of, Bobby Kennedy, but then shifted support to Donald Trump, has already left him, okay, and announced on the Breaking Point program that he regrets actually voting for Donald Trump and that he now wants Trump, to be immediately impeached and convicted, by the Congress. So he is only one example, but there's a lot of dissatisfaction and criticism of what Trump is doing, including coming from Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson, okay, and some other people too. Lots of people are reporting a MAGA split at this point, because it looks like Trump, okay, is going to give the orders for a large scale attack on Iran. As far as I'm aware, it's even possible, he's already given those orders. But okay, let's go back to our comments. Evelina says, is there confirmation on the Uniliving of highest Israeli Air Force officials, Mr. Barr, I'm not sure what that is. According to social media, he is no longer. I presume that means that, okay, a leading Air Force official uh, uh, has now left his post. He resigned or been killed. I don't know. Evelina will perhaps make our comment a little more clear. In a moment, she's usually very, very clear.
Yes.
But let us move along to our next piece, which I will cover. It's another blog post by Larry Johnson. Trump's schizophrenic uh, uh, Middle East policy facilitating disaster. He wrote this one on the 15th. That was on Sunday, of course. I'm sorry. This is a tweet from Yossi Melman. I cannot read the Hebrew, especially not without the vowels underneath. I'm sorry about that. I used to know Hebrew a long time ago, but it has fallen into disuse by me. Okay, the euphoria was short-lived. On Friday morning, I asked whether it was even necessary to start a war, especially against the Iranians. Shiites are historically willing to suffer. I mentioned their willingness to sacrifice as they demonstrated in the 8 years of attrition with Iraq. I recommend that we cut our losses and turn to Trump. So when he says our here, he's talking about Israel's losses. And turn to Trump to stop the madness with a reasonable agreement. Otherwise, we will end up begging for a ceasefire and Iran will refuse. Now going on with what Larry has to say. Watching Donald Trump's shifting positions on the Israel-Iran war is like trying to follow a tennis ball being batted back and forth over the net by two dudes hyped on steroids, except Trump is playing both sides of the net. The back and forth is truly dizzying. After the outbreak of the war early Friday morning in Tehran, Trump was brimming with confidence that Israel would destroy Iran. He started with this huzzah. Trump tweet, 12:43 p.m. Eastern, 13th of June, 2025. I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words to just, quote, just do it, unquote. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. What he means there, they just couldn't submit to my terms. That's what he's saying. I told them it would be much worse, going on with the quote, than anything they know, anticipated, or were told that the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far, FAR. He seems to have forgotten what's happened to the best, military equipment anywhere in the world in the Iranian war. In other words, we know that's one of the usual falsehoods that Trump tells, that Israel has a lot of it with much more to come, and they know how to use it. Certain Iranian hardliners spoke bravely, but they didn't know what was about to happen. They are all dead now. And I said it that way because it's in caps in the tweet. and it will only get worse. There has already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make the slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was not once known as the Iranian Empire. No more death, no more destruction, and in caps, just do it before it is too late, unquote, or uncap. God bless you all, says Donald, says the Donald. Uh, Going on with Larry, he was damn proud that U.S. weapons were being used to kill Iranians that same day, notwithstanding uh, uh, denial of Secretary Rubio that the U.S. played any role or had any knowledge about Israel's attack on Iran. Trump expanded his bragging in a comment to the New York Post. I always knew the date Israel would attack. I know everything, he says.
He's such an asshole.
I'm so glad he said that, because when he comes up on charges before the International Criminal Court at some time in the future, we can enter this statement into evidence. Going on, if he knew, then he could have stopped it. Well, it looks like Mr. Know-It-All started having second thoughts after his chat, quote unquote, on Saturday with President Putin. Trump tweet, 3:01 p.m. Eastern, 14th of June, 2025. That, of course, was on Saturday. President Putin called this morning to very nicely wish me a happy birthday, but to more importantly talk about Iran, a country he knows very well. We talked at length. Much less time was spent talking about Russia/Ukraine, but that will be for next week. He is doing the planned prisoner swaps. Large numbers of prisoners are being exchanged immediately from both sides. The call lasted approximately 1 hour. He feels as to why this war in Israel-Iran should end, to which I explained his war should also end. I don't know if that's an explanation, but anyway. So then Larry says, no more bragging or chest thumping about the powerful U.S. weapons that were going to put an end to the Iranian regime. 7 hours later, Trump completed his Volt face. Volt face is an about face. Trump tweet at 34 a.m. Eastern Time on the 15th of June, 2025. So that, of course, is 34 minutes past midnight. The U.S. had nothing to do with the attack on Iran tonight. If we are attacked in any way, shape, or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces will come down on you at levels never seen before. However, we can easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end this bloody conflict. Triple exclamation point. And Larry goes on, sort of reminds me of the iconic scene from the movie Gone with the Wind when the character Prissy, played by the legendary Butterfly McQueen. I never knew that she was legendary, but okay. Tells Scarlett O'Hara, quote, I don't know about birthing no babies, unquote. In less than 37 hours, Trump went from knowing everything and touting the power of U.S. weapons being used to clobber Iran to Sergeant Schultz of Hogan Heroes fame. And there's a video of Sergeant Schultz announcing that he knows nothing. Like a transgender transitioning, Trump went from the know-it-all about war to President Peace. Trump tweet, 11:24 a.m. Eastern, 15th of June, 2025. Iran and Israel should make a deal, and will make a deal, just like I got India and Pakistan to make. in that case by using trade, that's in caps, with the United States to bring reason, cohesion, and sanity into the talks with two excellent leaders who were able to quickly make a decision and stop. Stop is also in caps. Also, during my first term, Serbia and Kosovo were going at it hot and heavy, as they have for many decades. No, they haven't for many decades. In other words, Serbia and Kosovo were inside of Yugoslavia, and they weren't fighting at all until the breakup of Yugoslavia. And this long conflict was ready to break out into war. I stopped it. Biden has hurt the longer term prospects with some very stupid decisions, but I will fix it again. Another case is Egypt and Ethiopia and their fight over a massive dam, that's, the Aswan Dam, that is having an effect on the magnificent Nile River. There is peace, at least for now, because of my intervention, and it will stay that way. Likewise, we will have peace, again, caps, all in caps, soon between Israel and Iran. Many calls and meetings now taking place. I do a lot and never get credit for anything, but that's, in caps again, okay. The, in caps again, people understand. And all in caps, make the Middle East great again. Ay, ay, ay. I don't think Trump understands or appreciates how damaging his flip-floppery is to his education, reputation among foreign leaders. Who can trust this guy? Meanwhile, the Zionists continue to insist that Iran is running out of missiles. I guess Iran did not get the memo. Here is the latest strike on Haifa's power plant early on the 17th of June, Israel time. And then Larry adds the video for us here, which we shall not play, and also a second video. And there is more video footage reportedly showing a strike on Israel's air defense unit at the Nevatim Air Force Base. That's in the negative. I'm sorry, that's in the Negev. Yeah, in the negative. Donald Trump's new position favoring peace. I think he's going to reverse himself again and approve U.S. strikes inside Iran. Within the last hour, there's a report of a massive movement of U.S. military tankers. The U.S. is now deploying 24 Air Force tankers eastward, an unprecedented surge for far beyond any NATO exercise like Trident Juncture. Trident Juncture 2018, the largest in recent years. Okay, the U.S. deployed around 6 to 8 tankers, KC-135 Strato tankers, and KC-10 extenders, mostly from bases like IRF, Mildenhall Air Base, and Ramstein, not from U.S. bases. Also, additional tankers are often contributed by NATO partners, e.g. the UK, Netherlands, Germany, bring the total to 10 to 15 tankers in theaters at most. So, of course, the 24 Air Force tankers going eastward far outnumber the 10 to 15 tankers that we used in that exercise. Going on with the quote, this isn't routine. These tankers are strategic force multipliers, enabling long-range ops for bombers, fighters, and ISR assets. And, of course, they would be used in order to extend the range of Israeli planes and of bombers, especially. But going on with Larry, if these tankers are used to fuel U.S. and NATO aircraft that attack Iran, then Donald Trump will own the war in Iran and the consequences that follow. He can kiss his chances for a Nobel Peace Prize goodbye. I think that's the least that Larry could have said about that one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think he can already kiss his chances for that goodbye, unless there's a sudden about face. By the way, we're up to 593 people here, so that's certainly very, very encouraging. Please, everyone, share, like, and subscribe. We need these things for YouTube, which is, Evelina says what she means by unaliving is also known as killing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Mr. Barr was killed. Is Mr. Barr there? The Ronan Barr? Is that the Barr you mean? Earl says, why would Iran refuse a ceasefire? Because they're winning the war and they're demilitarizing Israel. That's why they would refuse a ceasefire.
And you can't trust the U.S. and Israel at all.
No, you can't, because
They wouldn't.
they
Yeah.
violate ceasefires all the time. I mean, look at how many times Israel's been violating a ceasefire with Lebanon. It's habitual for them to violate ceasefires.
Mm-hmm.
I think the U.S. and Israel are not agreement capable. Neither of them is agreement capable, and I think Trump just blew his chances for making any kind of agreement with anybody.
He
I don't
did.
even know if he could make an agreement with Putin, who very much wanted to make an agreement with him.
Exactly. And the thing with Iran, from the beginning, Iran was skeptical because of the past with the U.S. You spend all this time trying to get agreements together, and then the U.S. ends up breaking it.
Yes, absolutely. And the Earl of Lurl says the G was sarcastic, laugh out loud. I often miss sarcasm. I'm told by others it's the cheapest form of wit. Maybe that's why I miss it all the time. Anyway, okay, let's get on to the next one. I think we're there. We're sort of getting through things here. We might even get through everything we have to get through tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Next one is yet another blog post by the inimitable Larry Johnson. And that one is being shared right now for you, D.
Okay, see it here. Donald Trump doubles down on crazy. 16 June 2025 by Larry Johnson. And here's a tweet by Donald J. Trump. He says, Iran should have signed the, quote, deal. I told them to sign. What a shame and waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. He said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. He's such a jerk. Everybody knows that if they had a nuclear weapon, all of a sudden, all this would be stopped.
Yeah, right. If Tehran, had a nuclear weapon, okay, I have to say I don't think it was there, but they have received some shipments from Pakistan in recent days, and Pakistan had offered them some nukes previously, if they needed them.
Yes.
So if in those shipments there were any nukes, it's possible Iran has got some nukes now. All they have to do is load them onto their missiles, and it's Katie bar the door when it comes to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 3 to 5 nukes. That would be all that would be necessary for the whole place. It's so small. But anyway, going on.
Clean up in aisle 5. Someone needs to tackle Donald Trump and confiscate his phone. He should not be allowed to post on Truth Social until some adult with a measure of common sense has a chance to review prospective Trump posts. Roughly 16 million people live in the Tehran metropolitan area. Where would they go? This post by Trump has caused many around the world to take a hard gulp and wonder if Trump is serious. Telegram channels are spinning frantically with claims, none verified, that the U.S. is going to attack Iran. But the White House has issued a denial. Take that with a hefty grain of salt. What? Yeah.
Yeah, take that with a hefty grain of salt, but also note that the 16 million people who are living in the metropolitan area currently have a shortage of gas because of our attacks on Iranian oil.
Mm.
So even if they wanted to get out, of the metropolitan area, there would be a limit on how many of them could get out because I understand there's a shortage of gas there as a result of the Israeli attacks. Please go on.
The White House tried to downplay Trump's remarks by claiming that Trump's post calling for the immediate evacuation of Tehran reflects his desire to urgently bring Iran back to the negotiating table. I'm not sure there is enough lipstick in Washington to cover this pig and make it look beautiful. However, Trump reportedly wants J.D. Vance and Steve Witkoff to meet later this week with Iranian officials. Just one more example of the schizoid behavior of Trump. I don't know about you, but I am growing weary of his clownish behavior. The chaos in the Trump White House is not confined to the Iran-Israel war. Maria Zakharova, the spokeswoman for the Russian Foreign Ministry, made the following announcement around 4 p.m. Moscow time. Today, the next meeting within the framework of bilateral consultations on eliminating irritants in order to normalize the activities of diplomatic missions of both countries has been canceled at the initiative of American negotiators. We hope that the pause they took will not be too long. I think Putin and his foreign policy team understand that Trump is a flake and are responding calmly, at least in public, to Donald's contradictory words and actions. Russia is still ready to intercede with Iran and Israel in hopes of securing a ceasefire. But the Kremlin first has to figure out what Donald's policy is, war or peace. The irrationality of the West with respect to Iran is illustrated by the following facts. Iran does not possess nuclear weapons, is a party to the NPT, the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, allows IAEA inspections, reports on the movement of enriched uranium under constant international pressure and sanctions, declared a threat only for the potential possibility of creating nuclear weapons. Israel de facto possesses a nuclear arsenal, estimates 80 to 200 warheads. It did not sign the NPT, does not allow international inspectors, completely classifies the nuclear program, receives support and military assistance from the West, declared a, quote, stronghold of democracy, and allegedly a victim. In other words, Iran, the one country that does not have a nuke and is abiding by international law governing nuclear weapons, is the villain, while Israel, who is flaunting those laws, is being treated as the victim. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's sarcasm again.
Yeah. Speaking of making sense, Tucker Carlson had the audacity to point out that Trump's support of Israel's war on Iran borders on political suicide for Trump. Instead of thanking Tucker for that warning, Trump attacked Carlson. Of course. Reporter, how did you respond to Tucker Carlson criticizing you, saying that you were complicit in the war? Trump, I don't know what Tucker Carlson is saying. Let him go get a television network and say it's so people actually listen.
That's Trump.
Yeah, he's such an idiot.
Pretty dumb, as Larry will point out.
Yeah. Yay, Tucker should give up his internet platform, which attracts millions of views, and get back on some irrelevant network that only attracts less than 1 million viewers. Gotta give Trump credit. He has a knack for posting some really stupid tweets. The prospect of the U.S. intervening in the war against Iran was the topic of many chats today with Nima, Justin Napolitano, and Glenn Deason.
And here are the videos for that. There probably will be another blog out from Larry Johnson soon. He usually posts sometime in the evening. This one was posted on the 16th of June. So his most recent post is probably up there already. I just couldn't schedule it for this stream because I was all set.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at any comments on that. I think that was a fairly insightful post. I see we have no comments on that. I hope you enjoyed it anyway, even though there are no comments. But we have top figure for the night, 594 people here. Let's see if we could possibly make 600. That would be very good. So we come now to our next piece, which is a video. And it is from, Danny Hyphon today. Danny Hyphon, let's see. Yeah.
Wanted to get another update on the Israel-Iran war situation. I'll be back live again soon, so stay tuned for this. But let's begin with the latest updates. So the Dayan camp, the military intelligence school of Israel, was targeted by next-generation missiles by Iran, and the Mossad headquarters ended up being targeted too.
The U.S. intel view that among the targets were Israeli airfields, but also, and this is crucial, the headquarters of Mossad, the International Intelligence Service of Israel, which is inside Tel Aviv. It's in the northern part of Tel Aviv, but it's in the city. It's in a densely populated area. And of course, the concern is if you're firing, even though Iran might consider that a military target, it is in a densely populated city.
Now, the damage is hard to verify because Israel has a extreme
2025 Best Cargo Pants for men over 40, specially designed to bring maximum comfort and practicality to
and incredibly deep censorship campaign right now. But according to reports, this is what we have. We have 4 missiles targeting the Mossad headquarters near the Gilad camp. We have about missiles landing 600 to 1,000 meters to the actual headquarters. So there wasn't a direct hit, but one hit near a roadway, another struck facilities at the Herzog camp, a third, a water treatment plant was struck, and the fourth, a high-rise building was struck. Now, while these strikes were not...
If they were successful in hitting the HQ of Mossad, would we know about it? Would we know about it? As Danny said, the censorship there is currently very, very tight. I think there's a pretty good chance, that Mossad is paying the price for participating, in the operation on the first day of the war. That the Iranians are in the process of making them pay for that. But here's Danny again.
not as precise as many of Iran's have been. The big news here is that Israel was unable to detect any of these, indicating that Iran is using higher and more advanced weapons and missiles in their latest strikes, even though they are getting smaller in number. So,
At the time of Danny's video, the particular wave he's talking about was smaller in number. But later today, in other words, later on Tuesday, the very latest attack was extremely heavy, the heaviest yet.
Iran has also reported conducting about 550 drone operations since the beginning of Operation True Promise 3, so over 100 per day. And they were able to destroy with these drone operations a long-range Israeli air defense system. Reports also say that another F-35 was downed over Iran, an Israeli flown F-35. We also see missile fragments in northern Israel. Another big development is that more and more we are seeing Israeli air defense interceptors fail. They're becoming exhausted. Video has emerged of this, and this could explain why there is panic all across the Israeli government as well as the United States government over how to respond to this in a rapid fashion. Now, we are still waiting for confirmation over how advanced these weapons are becoming, that Iran is using these missiles, but it is quite clear that Iran has said that they are going to continue to move up the escalation ladder, use their more advanced hypersonic weapons over the course of this conflict, and that they're ready for a long war.
So, according to the Iranians, they are far from through. And we can also infer from their statement that they're claiming that there's no shortage of their missiles and that we will be continuing to see more and more, advanced missiles as time goes on. Now, the missiles they've been using so far are sufficiently advanced to bathe Israel in missiles. So we can probably imagine that Israel probably will soon be looking at a flood rather than a bath of missiles.
Aviv remains under heavy fire. Despite the fact that these missile strikes are becoming fewer in number, all of Tel Aviv is essentially shut down. The residents of Tel Aviv are constantly and consistently having to go back and forth from bomb shelters. Effectively, Iran, through Operation True Promise 3, has taken out this capital as a viable center of any kind of activity, especially economic. So these are significant developments that need to be noted. Iran has said that they will continue their missile campaign, that this is really just the beginning, and they have dismissed all reports coming out of the Western mainstream media, Israeli media, that their missile systems are becoming exhausted. There are many theories about why Iran has decided to scale down the volume of their strikes. Some have said that this is psychological warfare, that they want to lull Israel asleep. Others have said they might be planning bigger operations, unpredictable operations that will strike at Israeli military and intelligence centers hard, and that they are trying to follow an unpredictable pattern that will ensure that Israeli air defense systems are not only exhausted but confused, and that the Israeli military is unable to predict their next moves. So all of this is very viable, of course, and very understandable. However, there are dangers here that are mounting. One of the dangers that Iran faces is not only the...
After years of craftsmanship and timeless style, our leather shop is closing.
Civilian casualties that have hit Iran, but also it appears that Iran is having struggles with the infiltration of the Mossad and, of course, Israeli intelligence and the Israeli military into the ranks of their highest military channels. So Iran has, according to Israeli media, this has not been confirmed yet, but Ali Shamdani, who replaced Ali Rashid, one of Iran's top military chiefs, was killed in an airstrike overnight. So this is probably the biggest danger that Iran faces at the time. But Operation True Promise 3, it appears, given that the beginning of this conflict saw Israel take out a large number of Iran's military leadership, it continues. So these decapitation strikes are not stopping Iran's overall military operation, and they are committing to an ongoing and long war with Israel and the United States if the United States should join in. So Tel Aviv is effectively shut down. Israeli military intelligence and intelligence as a whole is now a target of Operation True Promise 3. The missiles are becoming more advanced, they're becoming faster, and it's unclear how many missiles Iran has, because Iran has reported thousands at times. Some believe 150,000 of different types in various missiles. However, regardless, the most important information here is that Iran is ready to continue this operation and is not seeking capitulation. However, while
Okay, nobody knows, of course, how many missiles they have. I personally think the estimate that they have 150,000 missiles is on the low side. And the reason why is because some time ago there were estimates of Hezbollah's combined rockets and missiles and drones, uh, and the numbers of those were up to 120,000. It was reasonable to think at the time that Iran had actually 10 times that number of rockets, missiles, or drones. So, of course, we don't know how many ballistic missiles out of that number they have. Maybe the 150,000 corresponds to the number of missiles they have. One more comment about True Promise 3. The Israelis forced the release of True Promise 3 with their attack on Friday. They may be, of course, beginning to regret that, but some of us were wondering when True Promise 3 was going to be released, because we were expecting it in reply to the Israeli attack on Iran on October 26th. But, of course, the Iranians have been looking for peace since that time. So they were awaiting the results of the United States election before they retaliated with their True Promise 3. And they were waiting for the inauguration of Trump. Then they were hoping for the beginning of talks. And all this was going on while the Russians and the Iranians, were negotiating their treaty. The Iranians were tremendously patient because they were sincerely seeking peace. Now, they've been criticized by a number of people, including especially Scott Ritter, for enriching the the uranium they have to 61%, which is one centrifuge round away from getting to the 90 to 95% they need for bombs. Okay, so Iran actually did this after Trump broke the first agreement. The reason why they did this is that they felt it was all they could do to reply to what Trump had done, and they viewed themselves as creating a negotiating counter. So if the U.S. ever came back to the table, they could trade the 61% in return for the abandonment of sanctions by the United States. But Scott Ritter was criticizing them because he viewed the enrichment up to 61% as a waving of the red flag in front of the bull, viewing Trump as the bull. To me, it seems like the enrichment question is to some degree, I mean, it isn't a false issue. Okay, it's an important issue. But from the viewpoint of the United States, and Israel, the most important issue was to get rid of the Iranian regime completely. It was regime change. And to get rid, of the missile capability of Iran. That was really the issue behind all the other issues. The enrichment issue, in my view, was something of a pretext. If the Iranians had not enriched to 61%, but it stayed at 20% for medical research, then the Trump administration and the Israelis would have been objecting to that. If they completely complied with the original treaty, completely complied, and kept the 20% outside of Iran and enriched only to 3.67%, still the Israelis would have been making an issue about that, and the United States would have been supporting them, because what the Israelis were really after was Iran making itself defenseless against the Israelis, so the Israelis would be able to destroy the regime and dominate the rest of West Asia in the way they wanted to dominate it for Greater Israel. So I don't agree with Scott that the 61% of enrichment was a very significant thing in creating the possibility of attack by Israel, in the United States. I think whatever the Iranians did, the Israelis would have still been looking to attack, and I think the Israelis would still have been pressuring Donald Trump to back an attack, and to endorse an attack. I think the negotiations were in bad faith, and there was bad faith from the start. What the Israelis and then Trump wanted was for the Iranians to simply give up. I think that's always what's been at issue here. I'll go on with this now.
Wall Street Journal reported in the last 24 hours that Iran is indeed seeking capitulation, which was rejected wholeheartedly by the Iranian government. So there's been a lot of activity. These these missile campaigns and operations from the larger Operation True Promise 3 are going to continue, and we will continue to report on them here. Now, a big part of all of this, a big development, has been the war crime that Israel committed in the last 24 hours against the Iranian Broadcasting Corporation. Friend of this program, Mohammed Marandi, actually was participating in an interview while this operation was conducted. So the Iranian Broadcasting Corporation was hit by Israel. One was killed. There was video that surfaced of a reporter of the Iranian Broadcasting Corporation having to leave as the strike hit, and dust and debris came into the building. And just minutes later, after the dust had settled, she came back and reported on the situation. And this has received a hero's welcome, not only in Iran, but also much of the world, which sees these dirty tactics as not just a war crime, but also just a complete deplorable act that only worsens Israel's image in the world. So,
the only pants you'll want to wear this summer. Whether you're 50, 60, 70, or beyond, These are the comfiest pants that also
Israel is now targeting the media as part of a regime change operation, which, as you may remember, this same playbook was applied to Yugoslavia, to Libya, where media stations were targeted as a way to cut off people from information of coming from Iran or coming from the targeted state, leading to a huge gap and leading also to a psychological operation, which essentially amounts to a war on the truth. So that was one of the biggest strikes that Israel had, both the military leadership once again taking a hit, as well as the media. Now, there is a lot of panic right now happening, both inside of Israel and the United States. And the United States was participating in the G7. Donald Trump was in Canada, and he abruptly left. He said that after the dinner with leaders of the G7, he was going to leave for obvious reasons. And at the same time, he tweeted out or posted on Truth Social that Tehran had to evacuate immediately, that it was a waste of life, that Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. He also went after Tucker Carlson on Truth Social. This was a very chaotic scene, and the fog of war is incredibly high. The United States, at the same time as Donald Trump was tweeting all of these very incendiary and threatening Truth Social posts, we had the USS Nimitz, as well as other destroyers, head to the Middle East. We also have carrier strike groups and tankers also heading to the region in an apparent show that the United States is ready to enter and participate in this conflict at some level. There's a lot of debate right now happening about what level that will be. Some Israeli media tried to announce that the U.S. had actually participated in strikes on Iran, and the U.S. shot those down. Israeli media has also said that, and U.S. media has also said that the United States will eventually enter the war and that preparations are being made as we speak. The U.S. has also shot that down to a certain degree. However, what the U.S. has not shot down, and what Pete Hegseth said on Fox News, was that they were preparing to defend, quote unquote, their assets in the region should Iran attack them. Now, the biggest development here, and there's a two.
Those are the bases in the region surrounding Iran. There are 68 of them, and the estimates are 40 to 50,000 Americans on those bases. Not all combat troops, in fact, really a minority combat troops. So if the Iranians start to target them, it could become very ugly for the Americans stationed on those bases.
Big developments here when it comes to U.S. desperation is that Donald Trump said that he is looking for more than a ceasefire. He rejected all claims because some claims were being made that he was preparing a team to in an emergent fashion, speak with Iran's officials and set up a meeting between Steve Witkoff and the Iranian Foreign Minister, Mr. Araghchi. That was rejected by Donald Trump himself, but he did say that he's looking for more than a ceasefire, which has once again raised threats that the United States is going to enter this war of regime change in a more direct fashion. Of course, we know that the United States is supplying Israel with logistical support, is always supplying Israel with military support. And now the question is, how much more will the United States get involved? That is an evolving situation. And in another act of desperation, another act of what I think shows the panic happening in Washington, Donald Trump rejected Tulsi Gabbard's assessment during the annual threat assessment, and something that she has stood by, which is that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. He said he doesn't care what Tulsi Gabbard said, and that he is going to continue to.
I think after that, she has to resign now. I mean, if the president says that his top intelligence advisor, that he doesn't care what she says, he, of course, is being a fool, but she's being told that she might as well, not be there. So I have to say, I expect her to resign very soon, and not to resign quietly either.
To believe that Iran has a nuclear weapon or nuclear weapons, and he is going to continue to respond in kind based on this misinformation, apparently. And so this really represents, I believe, a huge expose, an exposure of how desperate and panicked the United States is right now in trying to manage the situation. There's a lot of fog of war. There's a lot of indecisiveness, it appears, and there is a lot of uncertainty about the United States' possible response. So this is essentially where the situation is at the moment. Iran is going to continue its missile attacks. It's going to ensure that Operation True Promise 3 continues. We have seen that Israeli air defense systems are becoming exhausted and they're becoming targeted. Israel is demonstrating that it does not have the capabilities, although it continues to claim it does, to significantly hit Iran's nuclear facilities. It does have the capabilities, however, to terrorize civilians. It is doing that. It is now striking media. But
Swiss engineer created a portable cooling system that's so efficient, it's making old ACs obsolete.
Overall, despite its claim of air superiority, Iran is conducting daytime missile strikes on Israel, which are causing damage, which have the entirety of Israel essentially on high alert, and it is disrupting the quote-unquote state of Israel's ability to function as a society. And this, I believe, is part of Iran's war of attrition and what it hopes to accomplish as this escalates. And Iran is looking at this.
I think that's a great point by Danny.
As a long war. It's not looking at this as a short war. It sees that the escalation is being managed in large part by what the United States does. And that will determine a lot about how Iran is able to respond, what Iran should do. And we are going to have to stay tuned about all of this. And the US side, however, as we see the embarrassments mount, as we see air defense systems fail from Israel, as we see Iranian missiles continue to be launched into Israeli territory, and as we see not just casualties, because Iran isn't going after huge numbers of casualties, but as we see the targets become more and more impactful, both in terms of their symbolic character, but also in terms of their actual impact, we are seeing now the scrambling of both the United States and Israel to prepare for a larger war. Iran says it is prepared for this. Iran has said that it is ready to target assets all across the region should the United States get more involved. So we are going to have to see now, in my estimation, it would be a disaster for the Trump administration to enter this war in full. And also, in my estimation, because the embarrassments have already been had, because Israel has already faced one of the most humiliating moments in its much vaunted and horrific genocidal history and colonial history, it would be, in many instances, an immediate reaction from the United States if the U.S. were in a better position and were feeling confident. Mind you, the United States does not delay, does not wait, does not think strategically. When it is able to strike immediately and with major force, it does. So many, actually, even in the Western mainstream media, on Fox News, otherwise, people like Steve Bannon have intimated that the United States under Donald Trump would have likely struck already. Now, I'm not going to underestimate the ability of the United States to commit horrific war crimes, enter this war, and do a lot of damage to Iran. But it appears the hesitancy that the United States is demonstrating under Donald Trump right now is because there are a lot of considerations that have to be taken into account. One, if the United States does enter this war in full, it has the potential to destroy, and I'm going to say this very clearly, destroy the world economic system, the world economy. We will see recession, we will see oil prices go up to levels that we have not seen in generations, if ever. We will see economic calamity, and we will see a drop in public trust and legitimacy in the United States and worldwide of the United States in general. This is something that Donald Trump will have difficulty in navigating and managing at such an early point in his administration. Of course, the Iran war hawks, people like Lindsey Graham, they don't care about this. They are seeing an opportunity right now to try to strike as quickly and as forcefully as possible to commit regime change. They are looking at the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. They see him as the head of the snake. They want to kill him. They want to assassinate him. They want to send a message to the Iranian people that their government, that their political system is not only under threat, but it is going to be destroyed imminently. And so this is psychological terror. This is terrorism. We see Israel committing acts of terrorism in the last 24 hours. They have focused a lot on detonating car bombs and moving in a way where they strike at the heart of the Iranian people in a
So Danny, of course, is very correct about that, that we in the West are turning to terrorism, as a method. It's not stateless terrorism, but it's state-sponsored terrorism. And to some degree, that's what was going on really at the start of this, with the drone attacks from inside of Iran. But it now continues, but its targets are no longer military. Its targets are the civilians themselves.
manner that is supposed to send a message that they should be afraid and that their fear should lead them to want to destroy the Iranian government, overthrow it. Now, it appears that the Iranian people are not interested in this. We don't see any evidence of protests, of color revolution activity in Iran. This likely indicates that the Iranian people, at the very least, are uniting around the current government in a state of war. Now, this was always
This is the fastest proven way to actually remove under eye bags with no Botox and no surgery. If you're
likely going to be the case. The Iranian people have been suffering decades of sanctions and war threats and actual war. Remember, after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, the Iran-Iraq War started immediately, and the U.S. backed, some say the United States backed both sides, but they sent weapons of mass destruction to the Iraqi government. This led to horrible casualties and losses on both sides, but this was right after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, and Iran came out of it, and they were able to rebuild and continue developing their society under sanctions. So Iran, at this moment, both its people and its government are demonstrating that they are not bowing down, they are not capitulating to Israel or the United States. And at this very moment, the United States is pondering whether it is going to get more heavily involved. And what would that look like? Well, I've said on this program before that the United States is facing a big predicament in that as it sends its naval destroyers, as it sends its aircraft carriers, and as it sends its tankers, etc., to the region, it has to factor in that Iran may even be holding back right now because it is saving its most advanced weaponry and its most effective missile stockpiles for the event of a wider and bigger conflict. So
I think that's an excellent point, and I think it brings up the further issue that if we commit our naval resources there, which we have to do to attack Iran, it's going to be an attack by our air forces and our naval forces. It's not going to be a ground attack. We don't have a large enough, the army isn't large enough to attack. Okay, but if we send our aircraft carriers there, our destroyers there, what's very likely to happen is that some of these assets are going to be sunk. It was almost the case that the Houthis sank one or more of our carriers. Uh, if other carriers go back in, okay, and the Nimitz is supposed to be close to West Asia, right now, uh, undoubtedly the Iranians will be targeting the Nimitz, with ballistic missiles, very sophisticated ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, very sophisticated, hypersonic ballistic missiles, very accurate ones, very precise ones as well. It's almost certain that the more sophisticated Iranians will be able to sink, okay, our naval assets. If we really commit heavily our naval assets to this, it's very likely we'll lose 2 or 3 of our carriers. That's going to create great dismay here in the United States and will probably involve the loss of multiple thousands of U.S. lives. 3 carriers, 15,000 sailors going down to the bottom of the ocean. Very, very, very dangerous to commit our forces there. A lot of our destroyers would also be destroyed. Okay, we haven't been really talking about that kind of possibility. Danny's talking about the threat to the world economy because the Straits of Hormuz could be blocked easily by the Iranians, using their naval resources. If they do, that's likely going to kill the world economy. Everybody will be blaming the United States for this. That will be one of the catastrophes for us. The general prediction of catastrophe, if we get directly involved in this war, is shared widely by people with strong military backgrounds. Colonel McGregor, Colonel Wilkerson, Colonel Davis, Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis, Major Scott Ritter, a major in the Marines, sort of like the equivalent of a colonel in other services. Other people very knowledgeable about military affairs. They all predict that this is going to be a catastrophe for the United States. For what it's worth, I agree with them. I also think it's going to be a catastrophe for the United States. Our naval assets are sitting ducks for rocket and missile attacks. We do not have air defenses that work against hypersonics. That has brought about a change in balance of power in the world. It's a change we have not been willing to recognize, but it's a change that has taken place nevertheless. And if we push the situation with the war inside of the Middle East, then I think the Iranians will be able to inflict a catastrophic defeat upon U.S. forces. As Danny has said, likely there'll be great damage done to Iran by the United States, by its air forces and its naval forces. Also likely the Iranians, who have a great capacity to endure suffering, will shake that off and continue the war. To win the war, all they have to do is survive and continue delivering punishment to Israel. If the war continues, we will likely see the end of Israel. because their economy will be destroyed, the settlers will be chased out, Israel will decohere as a society. Right now, the Iranians are concentrating on demilitarizing Israel. But beyond the demilitarization of Israel is the destruction of the coherence of Israeli society. And that, even though I don't think it's an intention of the Iranians, is being worked on as we speak. And I don't think the United States has reckoned yet sufficiently with that particular possibility. So, we may both lose the war and see Israel destroyed. It behooves the Zionists who want to see the continued existence of Israel to change their positions and to move towards peace right now, to stop the United States from intervening, to accept the inevitability of the multipolar world, and also the inevitability of a two-state solution for Palestine, and the inevitability that there will not be a greater Israel. All those things must be accepted if we are to have peace and if we, the United States, are to avoid a defeat. I'm sorry.
So this could mean that the United States has to take into account what happens when U.S. F-16s or F-35s or whatever it may be of aircraft, the USS Nimitz and other naval destroyers, what happens when Iran targets them via their air defense systems or their advanced hypersonic missiles? Because if the United States loses even just one of these in conflict, it will be an incredibly damaging scene and blow to American exceptionalism, and the ruling circles, the foreign policy establishment, will likely want to escalate further, and this could mean a potentially nuclear war situation where the U.S. considers dropping a nuclear bomb on Iran.
Many people have said that the problem with the neocons is that they don't have a reverse gear. It's always forward, forward. Let's hope, for the sake of the world, that they recognize the military reality facing us and they quickly develop a reverse gear. That is what is needed now, okay? A reverse gear for all our sakes. Continued escalation in the fight with Iran or in the Ukrainian war. Both of those are currently suicidal. We have to stop.
Given that danger, because if the United States goes down that path, it's the end of Donald Trump. It might signal and spark widespread unrest in the United States and worldwide. All of this.
This is the latest razor developed by Gillette, a super sharp and portable razor. It features German diamond.
Is deeply dangerous for the United States, not to mention the fact that the U.S. military is exhausted. Its air defense systems are exhausted. They have used up much of their weaponry and whatever they had in the Ukraine conflict. And of course, there are forces inside of the U.S. foreign policy establishment that see that if they waste everything they have left on a war of regime change on Iran, they'll have nothing for China. So this is the U.S. military, U.S. empire outstretched. We are seeing its decline, and we are seeing the panic that Operation True Promise 3 has laid bare.
All good points by Danny. In the larger geopolitical situation, if we want to retain any semblance of our current influence, We have to have some weaponry in reserve. And what we're doing now is we're draining all of our all of weaponry we have. And in the present state of our military production capabilities, we just can't produce what we've lost very fast. And our opponents in these wars, the Russians inside of Ukraine, the Iranians, they will not be pausing the wars with ceasefires to allow us to recover. They will see that we are getting close to our limit, and they will fight to close out these wars with victories, which they will get. Then we will have to reckon, with those. If Iran leads to big failures, as I believe it will, and as all the other people I mentioned also believe, it will, consider the following. How many changed votes within the House would be required for the third impeachment of Donald Trump? Only 5, 6, 7 votes are needed to shift that vote over to the impeachment of the president. Then things go to the Senate. Many more changed votes have to be there. But if it's seen that any intervention that we are having with respect to Iran is unsuccessful, if we see disasters happen, if the B-2s are shot out of the sky, if the aircraft carriers are sunk, if the Straits of Hormuz are blocked and our economy crashes, how many Republican senators will begin to say, let us get rid of this man. Let us end this conflict. Let us change course before it is too late. There needs to be 20 of the Republican senators to shift over, and Donald Trump could be convicted. That seems like a lot, but senators are more independent than the House members. And in a situation where Donald Trump's approval rating, currently at 39% and 38%, falls to 28% or 25%, you can bet that there are 20 senators who will shift over to conviction.
On the US empire and, of course, Israel with it. So we're going to have to see where all of this goes. It is still an evolving situation, but we know now that Iran is rolling out more advanced weaponry. We know that Iran is scaling down the volume of its attacks, how big they are in one sitting, but they are using more tactical operations on.
Once again, they're not scaling down the number of missiles yet. They scaled down during the wave Danny was talking about, but then followed up with the heaviest attack of the war afterwards. So they may not be scaling down.
Israeli intelligence, for example, they're also using very advanced ways of fooling Israel into shooting decoys and other kinds of distractions that have been able to preserve Iran's stockpiles and its facilities that are holding them. So all this is to say is that Iran continues to fight on. The government is still intact. Many are wondering whether this can go on in the same way. And it's my assessment that Iran appears very much prepared for a long conflict, not only with Israel, but potentially the United States, depending on how the United States actually responds to this. And under the Trump administration, we have seen that this unpredictability is very dangerous. It could lead to escalations like the one that we are talking about here. But, and we have to say but here, while the dangers are very real, let us not be fooled that Iran losing its military leadership, being hit in the way that it has against civilians isn't impactful. One, it sends a really stark message to the Iranian people that they have choices to make. Either get ready and fight in a war or capitulate. That's a very difficult choice for people to make, and it's a symbol of the Iranian people's heroism that we see, for example, the reporter of the Iranian Broadcasting Corporation, an Iranian television station, come back and report after an airstrike. That shows a huge level of resolve. But the decapitation of military leadership, while it's not going to overthrow the regime at this moment, they're not going to overthrow the Iranian government at this moment, it marks a significant challenge that Iran faces, which is they are heavily infiltrated. And while they're working on this and they are working to stamp out whatever Mossad and Israeli intelligence infiltration has occurred, it appears that it is quite significant and will have an impact on the length and the trajectory of this conflict. But at this
One more prediction by me. I don't know whether the Iranians have severely damaged the HQ of Mossad yet or not, but I predict that if they have not, in the next couple of days, they're going to destroy the HQ of Mossad. They're going to shoot their best and most advanced and most precise missiles at the HQ of Mossad, and they're going to hit it. And there's nothing Mossad can do to stop it. We're going to see that. Mossad, is going to see that. And there's a morale factor there too, not just a morale factor on the part of the Iranian people. There's a morale factor with respect to Mossad. If many of their people are killed and their headquarters, are gone, then they will feel the pain of their leadership, being eliminated. And they will feel the pain of their organization, suffering disorganization. And their communications with their cells inside of Iran are likely to be disrupted because their communication systems will probably not be working any longer. And I don't know whether Mossad has planned for severe hits, from the Iranians, because the Israelis always tend to underestimate what the Iranians can do technologically. In their arrogance, they have done that for some time. And I think they're now at the point of paying the price.
moment, Iran is defending itself, it is fighting back, it is not on the verge or the brink of falling. And now it's all about what does the chaotic, the confused, the panicked, and the absolutely warmongering administration of Donald Trump, what it is going to do as we move into the next phase of not only Operation True Promise 3, but of course this war on Iran that seeks to change the regime and attack all of the multipolar world in the process. Because remember, I've been saying it since the very beginning, the road from Libya to Syria, and of course all the regime change operations that the US and Israel have been a part of, the Gaza genocide, everything that has happened in the region, all of it points to the destruction of Russia, China, and Iran in the final analysis. And now Project Iran, is in full swing.
I thought that was a terrific video, including discussion of the geopolitical implications. what Danny failed to mention, okay, at the end was the centrality of Iran to the projects of China, okay, and Russia to create the integration, okay, of Eurasia. Iran is absolutely critical to that. The North-South corridor Russia's trying to build, the center of that, okay, is Iran. The Belt and Road Initiative, the East-West project the Chinese are trying to accomplish, Iran is also central to that. So when we talk about the coming integration, okay, of Eurasia, which is key to the multipolar world and the emergence and sustainability of the multipolar world, these things are dependent in part on the survival of Iran and the prosperity and the sustainability, okay, of Iranian society. So right now, the West, the United States, is striking at that. Both the United States and Israel are striking at that. But we have to understand that the Chinese and Russians are not likely to let Iran fall because of its centrality to their projects. What happens if the Chinese decide to send not just aircraft to Iran, but pilots to fly for Iran? So Iran finally has an air force that can contend with the Israelis and contend with the United States. We haven't even begun to anticipate what we're going to do if China sends not just airplanes, but pilots. The Russians, of course, in other situations, have sent both airplanes and pilots to allies of the Russians when their allies didn't have the training to fly the planes. The Russians have done that in the past, and they may do that now if things become desperate, for Iran. Right now, they're not desperate. It looks like Iran is winning. But if the United States should intervene and should turn the tide, we have to consider the possibility that there will be parts of the Chinese Air Force and parts of the Russian Air Force directly confronting the naval air assets of the United States over the skies of Iran and over the skies of Israel. And it's not beyond us seeing, even if everybody avoids escalation to a nuclear war, it's not beyond possibility here that the Russians will get sick of the Israelis and will decide to introduce a few Oreshniks into the situation. Just pointing to possibilities here. I mean, the United States is not the only one who can continue irresponsibly to escalate and to escalate and to escalate still further. What I'm saying is that, okay, in the end, at the end of the escalation ladder, there is only disaster for the United States. Now, we might be able to take down the whole world with us, but from where I sit, that is not much consolation. But in an escalation game, the best we can hope for is a draw, which means the end of human life on Earth. Or we could possibly be defeated by others who have superior escalatory force. But there's no victory at the end of the rainbow for us. We have to stop. It's best if we stop sooner rather than later.
Joe, this is from Mint Press News on X. It says 4 Iranian missile struck an area where Israeli Mossad and Unit 8200 buildings are located. According to reports, a Mossad target was struck after video footage revealed Israel's Arrow 3 air defense system failing to intercept the incoming Iranian missiles.
Yes, of course. They couldn't take care of the hypersonics. And so 4 missiles actually hit the Mossad building, or just the area
Yes,
around it?
it said, okay, I'm going to say, it says 4 Iranian missiles struck an area where Israeli Mossad and Unit 8200 buildings are located.
Yes, but we don't know what the damage was to those buildings yet.
No, we don't. This just came in 3 hours ago from Mint Press.
Yes. Anyone see a USS Liberty sequel coming?
People are suggesting that they're thinking something the U.S. is gonna do something to say that Iran struck.
Oh, you mean a false flag to,
Yes, yeah.
Well, that may be an excuse to get us into the war, but it doesn't help us with a victory.
No.
In other words, from that point of view, we're not helped if we don't have a cure for the hypersonics, which we don't have.
No, and we're up Schitt's Creek.
We are still open to our naval assets being destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And much of our air power, most of our air power in that part of the world comes from our naval assets. It's a long way from the United States to those areas. To project our air power, we need our naval assets, and those are vulnerable.
Right, so it's complete stupidity in the U.S. You know, the people who are in charge of all this.
Even from the point of view of wanting to be the hegemon, to continue to, well, first of all, we have to recognize we can't be the hegemon anymore right now.
Mm-hmm.
But even if we intended in the long run to become the hegemon again, the only way to possibly do that is to retrench. And we have to change the character of our society.
Yes.
We have to devote much of our internal industry, once again, to producing war material. We have to turn back to the kind of economy we had in World War II and in some later years. We don't have that kind of economy anymore.
Right, we screwed ourselves over.
We can't contend with the Russians when it comes to military production, and we can't contend with the Chinese either when it comes to military production.
Right, it was a stupid concept.
Yeah, the neoliberal concept was stupid. It did not really consider national security. And when you couple the neoliberal concept of economics with the neocon concept of foreign policy, you get disaster.
Exactly.
That is the situation that we are in right now. We have to rebuild. We have to come back to the United States to do so. We are overextended. We have to recognize that. Now, there were some elements in the first Trump administration that recognized that. Doug McGregor was there, as an advisor. He talked to Trump on a number of occasions. Trump had the idea that possibly what needed to be done was us to retreat to our hemisphere. But Trump allowed himself to be captured by those people who wanted to see him bring down Russia, bring down Iran, and bring down China. And
right, all the neocons.
He's still playing games with them. And he's got to kick them out. He doesn't understand. He's got to kick them out. He's got to bring the deep state under control. He's failed in all those particulars.
Yes, and it's all the stock market. They want to see their stocks up with military weapons being sold.
result in a failed presidency for him.
Yeah, so now I have something else to tell you. It says here, also in Mint Press, that reports indicate that Israeli fighter jets entered Turkish airspace unopposed, despite Turkey's reported opposition to Israel's attack on Iran. It reportedly allowed its airspace to facilitate it.
Okay, well, that's terrible for Erdogan. He made the wrong decision in that case, but I don't think it's going to help the Israelis. Okay, I think the Iranians will continue with their attacks. They will be devastating. If 2 more days of these attacks go on, the Israeli aircraft won't have any place to return to because their airfields are going to be destroyed.
Right, and it's already been stated. Iran's already been stated. The leadership had stated it's going to be. They've upped it.
Yes.
The next attacks, so it's going to be serious, more serious.
And when those air bases are gone, then what are the Israelis going to do? Are they going to use Turkish air bases? Somehow, I think Turkey won't go that far.
Right.
They've already said to Cyprus that if the Israeli aircraft goes to Cyprus for refuge, that the Iranians will attack Cyprus. And they do have the distance on their missiles to attack Cyprus also. So I don't think Cyprus is going to allow that.
No.
In the end. So, Evelina says that Barr, the Air Force commander, was allegedly taken out by the Iranians. Well, it's good. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Mr. Wonderful says, hello, everyone. Hello, comrades. Mr. Wonderful says, Z. And he also says, just joining. Sorry, I am late. I looked into how long Netanyahu had been making false claims that Iran was developing a nuclear weapon. Goes back to the 1980s, over 35 years. Yes, I know. Earl of Laurel says, Mr. Wonderful. Hey there, Earl of Laurel says, hello, comrades. GTS, cheers. Mr. Wonderful says, I'm not sure if they have used hypersonics yet. No, they have used hypersonics. I have seen the hypersonics. You can see them because when they come in, when they get close to the target, they start accelerating radically. I mean, they're sort of moving, sort of floating, and suddenly, whoosh! I mean, you can see them. Anyway, since I'm not sure these use that, but I do know they have stated they are saving them. They're saving some of them, their most advanced missiles, but they've got earlier hypersonics. Exactly. Israel will likely create a false flag to lure the U.S. into the conflict. I don't think they need a false flag. I think Trump has already decided to enter the conflict. All the signs are pointing to that. And Earl of Laurel says, capitalism is loyal to no lands. Yes. It's 100% Joe. America's over if the military spending isn't cut by 3/4 and close all military bases around the world. And Earl of Laurel says, Mr. Wonderful, but the Gauls have WMDs. The Gauls. The French have WMDs. That's really funny. 100% agree, Joe. No argument there. Okay, so let's get to the last of our videos. That's not as long as the other ones we've been going through tonight. It's one from a source I don't often turn to here, and that is Kyle Kulinski.
Fortunately, it looks like it's about to go down. Something very, very bad is about to unfold. So, a few things here. First of all, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was on Israeli TV the other day, This is last night, I believe. And he said the following, quote, "Your hour of freedom is near. It is happening now. 80% of the people of Iran despise the regime. Just like Cyrus the Great freed the Jews, now it is your time to be free. Rise up and make Iran great again." So,
by the way, after the Babylonian conquest of Judea in 586 BC, normally the Jews refer to it as BCE, before the Common Era. After that conquest, the Babylonians were conquered by the Medes and the Persians, and Cyrus the Great allowed the Jews to return to Palestine and to eventually, set up a government there. And so that's what Netanyahu was referring to there.
the key part there is your hour of freedom is near. It is happening now. That sounds like it's already been decided, and Trump is officially going to enter the war, in the sense that you have U.S. planes bombing Iran, potentially U.S. boots on the ground. Here's another one for you. So Israeli News Channel 14 said, Trump is expected to sign a presidential order in the coming hours to join the war.
Very soon, I'll be closing the doors of my handcrafted bag studio forever. This is your last.
Now, by the way, let's be clear, and I'll come back to this in a second. You can't decide we're going to go to war by executive order. That's not a thing. That's not how it works. Congress decides whether or not we go to war. What the U.S. government has been doing for a long time now is they've been stretching the interpretation of the authorization for use of military force that was used against Iraq in the war on terror. What they do is they just say, anybody we want to attack, they're a state sponsor of terror, therefore we get to attack them under the fucking early 2000s authorization for use of military force. In this context, that makes absolutely no sense. It's wildly illegal. It's wildly unconstitutional, because Iran had nothing to do with 9/11, had nothing to do with the war on terror. Zero. So this would be immensely, immensely illegal if he were to do this. And by the way, this is like, you better impeach immediately. Right now, you do have some Congress people scrambling to basically try to block war with Iran through the Congress, through legislation. But we got to go a step further. If Trump actually has American planes in the air bombing Tehran, he's got to go. He's got to go. All debate put aside. I don't care about any dissent whatsoever. This is all systems go, full steam ahead. We absolutely need to make sure this guy is removed from office. Argue vociferously at the top of your lungs. This is unconstitutional. This is illegal. And more importantly, it's immoral, because we all saw the chain of events. We all know Israel was the one that attacked Iran first. We all know who the aggressor is here. There is no plausible deniability that this is some sort of a defensive war. That is nonsense. All right, so more horrible indicators here. Trump orders the National Security Council be prepared in the Situation Room. He literally left a G7 meeting early. Now, by the way, at that G7 meeting, they had a vote on, should we de-escalate tension?
Since then, there has been a National Security Council meeting, and reportedly, Trump seems to have decided to go ahead with the possibility of war, because a lot of the National Security Council came out of that meeting very discomfited. They disagreed with the decision to continue to prepare for war. And maybe it was a decision to actually go to war. But I won't say there was a decision to actually go to war until Trump actually gives the order to attack. Okay, so I don't think he's given the order yet. I think they're still assembling forces to produce something that's really shock and awe. I'm afraid they might see their shock and order plans terribly disturbed. I mentioned some of those possibilities earlier in their stream, so I don't, have to mention again. But there may be some surprises awaiting them.
In the Middle East. Trump was the lone dissenting voice. he said no de-escalation. We want escalation. You literally had the other G7 countries looking at each other like, Jesus fucking Christ, what is going on here? So Trump was clear at the G7, we want escalation, not de-escalation. And then he left it early and told the National Security Council to be prepared in the Situation Room. Well, as you all know, when they're ready in the Situation Room, shit's going down, y'all. Shit's going down. So more. All military bases in the U.S. Indo-Pacific have raised their force protection condition from Alpha to Bravo. So in other words, they're saying higher level of alert because some shit's going down and there might be some retaliatory strikes. So everybody be prepared. That's what that means. All right. We also have B-1B Lancer bomber in the air over the Dakotas. This bomber can carry 75,000 tons or pounds, of cruise missiles and conventional ordnance. One of the most lethal non-nuclear platforms in the U.S. Air Force. So there's a lot of movement right now with U.S. weapons, with U.S. artillery. It looks like it's all being prepared. We have radar data shows multiple U.S. military aerial refueling aircraft heading to the Middle East, escorting fighter jets. So U.S. fighter jets are being sent to the Middle East right now. It looks like Trump has made the decision. We're going to illegally and unconstitutionally get directly involved in war with Iran, not in the sense of, oh, we're just arming Israel and we're funding Israel.
Okay, did he say a B-1 bomber? Again, B-1 bomber is a relatively slow plane.
And they're helping them with
that flies high. What's to stop an S-400 or S-500 system from shooting it down before the payloads are released, before they've even gotten into Iranian airspace? I don't know about that.
Shooting down Iranian missiles that are about to land in Israel. No, this is U.S. fighter jets in the air bombing Tehran, a city of over 10 million people. Okay, I have more for you. Remember, Trump said the other day, we talked about this in a breaking news segment, he said, the people of Tehran should evacuate. By the way, the traffic there is fucking horrible. It was 2 o'clock in the morning there when he said that. People were desperately trying to leave. The traffic jams were ridiculous. But now there's a fuel shortage there, so people can't get gas in their cars to leave because Israel bombed the gas they have there. And so now people are just stuck, and it's fucking hell on earth, and they're trying to escape and save their lives. And this is all because our psychotic president decided at 2 a.m. their time to tell everybody to evacuate Tehran because he's going to do an illegal and offensive and aggressive military strike against a city of over 10 million people. Canada is now urging all
in a metropolitan area of 16 million people.
Citizens in Iran to immediately leave and go to either Turkey or Armenia. We have the Chinese embassy evacuates personnel in Tehran. So you have all these countries making all these moves because the word is out behind the scenes. Shit is about to go down. We also have Trump is asked about Tulsi Gabbard testifying, and this happened just recently, that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. Here's what he said in response to that. You ready? Quote, I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having one. He says what he now wants is Iran, quote, giving up entirely, surrender. I'm not too much in a mood to negotiate. Oh, my God. So he's told his director of...
Well, maybe he'll be in a better mood to negotiate if he finds some B-1s and B-2s shot down, some carriers destroyed, and some other naval assets, going by the board, and a whole bunch of F-35s getting shot down by S-400 and S-500 systems. Maybe, just maybe, as Bernie Sanders likes to say.
National intelligence and his own intelligence agencies have concluded beyond any reasonable doubt, Iran is not building a nuke.
All right, guys, this is U.S. Senator John Ossoff in Georgia, and please just hear me out because I am the only
And he goes, I don't care. I say they're about to have a nuke, so I'm not in the mood to negotiate. Now I need total surrender from them. What does that even mean? If they're not building a nuke, which they're not, isn't that effectively, in a sense, total surrender? Isn't that what you want? And you're still going to attack them? The fact of the matter is, we are the baddies. Israel has always wanted this war. The U.S. has always wanted this war. They want regime change. That's the goal.
Right. Absolutely right. It's not the nuclear enrichment at all. that's just an excuse. They just want the submission of Iran. They're looking for a Libyan solution. They want Iran to become a failed state so Israel can dominate the Middle East, or I should say West Asia. That is what they're looking for, greater Israel.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're looking for. They're looking for Israel to extend from the Nile to the Euphrates, and for Israel to take over the whole of Syria up to the Turkish border.
Goal. Make no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I'm still not done yet. So ready for this? Buckle up for this one, y'all. So Trump posted a message from Ambassador Mike Huckabee. Now, I've warned you guys about Mike Huckabee for a long time. This is a guy who ran for president a few times. He literally said we should replace the Constitution with the Bible. He is a complete fundamentalist, evangelical Christian psycho. So he texted Trump and said the following, and Trump shared this publicly as if it was like a flex. Mr. President, God spared you in Butler, Pennsylvania to be the most consequential president in a century, maybe ever. The decisions on your shoulders I would not want to be made by anyone else. You have many voices speaking to you, sir, but there is only one voice that matters, his voice, talking about God. I am your appointed servant in this land and am available for you, but I do not try to get in your presence often because I trust your instincts. No president in my lifetime has been in a position like yours. Not since Truman in 1940. Sorry for that. I had to go to another slide and it was like in a weird place. Not since Truman in 1945. Which by the way, not since Truman in 1945. What did Truman do? What did Truman do? Look up which president dropped the atomic bomb, nuclear weapons, on Japan. That's what Truman did. Oh my God. Oh.
That's true, but if Harry Truman were alive now, he would not be nuking the Iranians. He would have learned his lesson.
My God. I don't reach out to persuade you, only to encourage you. I believe you will hear from heaven, and that voice is far more important than mine or anyone else's. You sent me to Israel to be your eyes, ears, and voice, and to make sure our flag flies above our embassy. My job is to be the last one to leave. I will not abandon this post. Our flag will not come down. You did not seek this moment. This moment sought you. It is my honor to serve you. So now there's a lot of speculation now, guys, and I think this is true based on the fact that Trump shared that and wasn't embarrassed by it. I think that Trump really buys this idea that God spared him to be this messianic figure. And remember, Mike Huckabee, the reason he's so excited is because he genuinely believes that Trump is about to usher in end times where Jesus rides down on a winged horse, kills most.
The only thing I disagree with there is I don't think Trump believes in God.
I don't think so either.
I'm sorry. I don't think he believes in God. What Trump believes in is the devil.
And what he recently did, from what I understand, was Ivanka wanted him. He speaks with this rabbi that Ivanka recommended and wanted him to convert. This goes years back. Allegedly, he converted to Judaism, basically because Ivanka wanted him to. So most likely not because of any belief.
So you believe the story that Trump is now Jewish, but he doesn't admit it to anybody.
Right. He keeps it to himself because of his evangelical base. That's what his concern was. So I don't even think he really believes in it. He's just doing stuff because, Ivanka wants him to do it, you know?
Okay, maybe so.
Most of the Jews, save some of the Jews, but then we all go up to heaven in this glorious end of the world moment. It's literally celebrating the idea of the end of life on earth and moving into the kingdom of heaven. And in order for that to happen, Israel needs,
in other words, it's a death cult.
Needs to have
It is a
all the
death
land.
cult.
in the Middle East, not just the area they
Yes, it is a death cult, isn't it?
It is. It's totally psychotic.
Okay.
have now. This is what this guy's goal is. This is why he supports Israel doing a genocide in Gaza and stealing all of the West Bank and warmongering with everybody else, because he thinks it's fulfilling biblical prophecy the more land Israel takes. Oh my God, bro. Oh my God. I'm still not done. So we also had, Trump said the following, because Emmanuel Macron said, oh, the reason Trump left the G7 early is because he has to go work on diplomacy vis-a-vis Israel and Iran, right? So that, in a sense, was Macron like trying to cover for Trump. But guess what? Here's what Trump said back. Publicity-seeking President Emmanuel Macron of France mistakenly said that I left the G7 summit in Canada to go back to D.C. to work on a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Wrong. He has no idea why I am now on my way to Washington, but it certainly has nothing to do with a ceasefire. Much bigger than that, whether purposely or not, Emmanuel always gets it wrong. Stay tuned. We are literally at the point where homie is tweeting comic book villain shit. Okay, we have another one. Trump said this. Pay very close attention to the language he uses here.
Homie.
Quote, we now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. Iran had good sky trackers and other defensive equipment, and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived, and manufactured stuff. Nobody does it better than the good old USA. He literally said, we now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. In other words, yes, this is my war. This is our war. I'm steering this ship, bitch. Oh my God. And then finally, Trump just tweeted, all caps with an exclamation point, unconditional surrender.
He's such an asshole.
Indeed, he is.
Saying to Iran, you need to unconditionally surrender, which, as I pointed out,
tweeting unconditional surrender. I mean, this man, he has no perception at all of the realities of the military balance, okay, at present. But I have to say, when you elect a moron like Trump, you deserve what you get.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know Harris, I was going to say, I know what's her name,
Mm-hmm.
was a terrible candidate. Okay, I know she probably would have continued the aid to Israel. But I really don't think she would have gone to where Trump is going right now. I really do not think so. Of course, they both were terrible choices.
But, there's that lobby there. The neocons selling a bunch of stuff. And it depends on who she had in office. And you know how powerful the Zionist lobby is.
And undoubtedly, she would have had the Democratic version of the neocons surrounding her in the same way that Trump has had the Republican version of the neocons surrounding him.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I don't think she would have been as ready to perceive the military bullshit they were handing out. I think she would have been more curious and more disciplined in seeking alternative opinions about what the military balance were. I might be wrong about that, but she had many faults.
Right.
And she certainly wasn't as good a marketer as Trump was. But she was and is a lot smarter than Donald Trump.
Right. And she would look at things probably through her lawyer mindset. And I think with Netanyahu, we don't know what angles he would have used to try to get them on board.
this is true, but if she looked at it from her lawyer mindset, she might have been more respectful of international law than Trump.
Hmm.
Trump has a total lack of respect, for international law or for domestic law. He does what he wants. Okay, I don't think she would have been as bad, but this is an academic debate now.
Well, we don't know. See, we don't know because we don't know how the Zionists would have tried to play her administration. We
Yes,
don't know what angles they would have used.
yes, we do know what we should have done was to have accepted to dump the corruption movement.
Yes.
Saw to it that neither of them made it to the stage of representing the major parties. We should have created a movement that would have rejected both major parties.
Hmm.
We do know that the candidates of the minor parties would not have gotten into this kind of situation had any of them become the president of the United States.
And Joe, now I'm thinking about your past shows with the Russians, providing cover, with Iran's airspace. So Iran's airspace, Russia's on board with covering their airspace.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure if the war turns into a relatively long one because of the support of the United States, that you will see Russian planes starting to arrive in Russia in big numbers, like the Su-35 and the Su-57. And there are going to be Russian flyers who are going to be flying those planes while they train, the Iranian airmen to fly it.
Hmm.
And then the F-35s are going to be in even more trouble. I think they're in real trouble already because of the S-400s. But also, the Russians can start shipping the S-500s to the Iranians. I think they might have done one or two of those already, and the Iranians have a supposed equivalent of the S-500 itself, but I suspect the Russian S-500s are better.
And also China too, the technology that China has.
Yeah, China has awesome technology, especially uh, uh, technology that integrates with the air defense system, okay, and also the net of air forces attacking. It has very superior technology in that way, so that in India, uh, in the recent war between the Indians and Pakistanis, the Pakistanis were using Chinese technology in that war, and they had planes, the Chinese J-10 jets, that individually were inferior to the Indian planes. Okay, the Indian planes were the Rafales from France, and on paper they had greater capabilities, than the J-10s, but they lost every air battle, against the J-10s. And the reason why was because of the integration of the J-10s into a system of communication where they could cover each other, okay, and they could act as a network. And the Indians, the Pakistanis operating much cheaper J-10 planes running about $25 million a unit, really gave quite a spanking to the Rafales that came in at $80 million a unit. It was extremely decisive and very illuminating, okay, as well. So when Chinese air technology gets to Iran, that's going to make a big difference also.
Hmm.
We go on.
In a sense, they did, because they don't have a nuclear weapon. They're not trying to get a nuclear weapon. They're not starting shit with anybody in the region. Israel is the one starting shit. The U.S. are the ones starting shit. But he still says unconditional surrender. They are trying to do regime change. The goal is get the son of the Shah back in power, who has zero popular support in Iran, by the way.
By the way, as long as Trump is about trying to get the son of the Shah back into power in Iran, why doesn't he mount a major attack on Russia and get the Romanovs back in? What the hell are you waiting for? Asshole.
Zero. Or just make Iran a failed state like Libya. That's the goal. That's what they're doing here. And something very, very horrible is about to go down. Very horrible. I don't know the exact nature of the attack, but they're very clearly going to attack. I don't know if it's going to be just air power and level blocks and blocks in Tehran, but it looks like that's definitely on the table. The scary part is even now, nukes are not off the table. The way this guy's talking with the messianic bullshit and sharing that thing that Huckabee sent to him, like this is a very, very, very dark moment that we're talking about here, y'all. We are witnessing it again, except a war with Iran would dwarf the war with Iraq.
What we don't know now is, in the face of all this, and with the meeting concluded with the Security Council here, okay, I don't know what Putin, okay, is going to do. I'm not talking about the military intervention by Putin, right at this moment, but a phone call to Putin to warn Trump off, to give him chapter and verse of what the Russians will do for the Iranians in case of any attack. And by the way, a solid warning to Trump that he's prepared to extend, the nuclear umbrella over Iran, the nuclear umbrella of the Russians, so that if Trump dares to nuke Tehran, there's going to be a Russian retaliation, against an American city of comparable size. If Putin delivers a threat like that, it will give Trump something to think about. I hesitate to say that because of the implications, but I think that will make Trump think twice. And he has to be made to think twice, okay, at this point. I think the Russians have to convey their view that the fate of Iran, okay, is essential to them, and that they prepare to do whatever is necessary to make sure that Iran continues to exist. I think it's very important for the Russians to do that now. It would be even better if the Russians and Chinese make a joint call to Trump and tell him, that an attack on Iran is equivalent, to an attack on them. That if the United States engage in the ultimate attack on them, there will be direct consequences for the United States. That is not allowed. And for all I know, they may be doing exactly that. I think that's what is needed now. I think that will stop Trump in his tracks. Because I don't think he's counting on a generalized nuclear war among the major powers. I think he thinks he can get away with using nukes against Iran without eliciting a response from other nuclear powers. By the way, just to add something to this, I think there should be a joint call from the Russians, the Chinese, and the North Koreans. Because Trump has to worry about the North Koreans too. Just saying.
Millions of dollars wasted, thousands of U.S. soldiers' lives, hundreds of thousands of innocent Iraqis, millions of refugees. That was Iraq. Well, guess what? Iraq was a smaller country and a less powerful country. Now we're talking about a country of 90 million people, over 10 million living in Tehran, and they are broadcasting to the world. We're about to go ham and ruin millions of lives by bombing this beautiful ancient city. I never want to hear it ever again from anybody who was part of MAGA. Don't say you weren't warned. I fucking warned you. I couldn't have been any more clear. I screamed it from the top of my lungs. I said, the guy's a fucking warmonger. Yes, he speaks out of both sides of his mouth on the campaign trail. He says pro-war shit. He says anti-war shit. But look at his record. His record is what matters. And this is the same guy that increased drone strikes over 400%, bombed Somalia, bombed Syria, ripped up the Iran agreement, illegally murdered Qasem Soleimani, gave Israel the Golan Heights, and the list goes on and on. And all the MAGA people swatted that shit aside and said, nah, I think he's anti-war. Well, fell for it again, award, bitch. Fell for it again. Because now we are in the worst case scenario. So, as I said, something very, very bad is about to go down. And it is absolutely terrifying. And there's not much else to say about it. I wish there was something we could all do to pump the brakes on this. I wish there was something we could do to, flip the script here. But this is world historic, evil, demonic shit coming from Israel and Washington, D.C. That's what it is.
Is it true that...
And I think Kyle was right about that. And here we are. We got 611 people here. Our high for the night. And Mr. Wonderful says, I got to go back before that. There were a lot of comments. Mr. Wonderful says, 10 days after 9/11, General Wesley Clark, by the way, there's no T in Wesley's name, said, in a Democracy Now! Interview that on September 20th, the U.S. Was to illegally take out 7 countries. Yes, I know. September 20th, yeah. Took out 7 countries, including Iran. And Iran right now is the last one left standing. Mr. Wonderful said, what does Syria, Somalia, Lebanon, Iraq, Libya, Sudan, and Iran have in common? They had nothing to do with 9/11. Victims of U.S.-Israel lies, and we're all fighting. Wait a minute, I lost my thread here. And we're all fighting CIA, Israel-armed ISIS. Mr. Wonderful says Huckabee is a psycho. I know. Pretty sure Huckabee is looking forward to the rapture like next week. Mr. Wonderful says 100% right, a death cult. Harris would have done the same as Trump. Well, you're entitled to your opinion. Earl of Laurel says Kamala was an empty vessel. Right. But she wasn't as stupid an empty vessel. Earl of Laurel says America is doomed until it breaks out of the duopoly death spiral. I believe that. I certainly believe that. But that's what my dump the corruption streams of the last 3 years, were about. Trying to get us out of the duopoly death spiral, but no one was listening. Earl of Laurel says, laugh out loud. Mr. Wonderful says, remember, Iran is a BRICS member. I do remember, but it's not the BRICS membership that's the key here. It's the closeness of the relationship of Iran with Russia and China, and even its contacts with North Korea. It's the relationship among the four of these nations, which is the key point right now, because that's where the military force comes from. In the longer run, I think BRICS is more important. But right now, it's the military force among the four of them and the contacts with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. More important than BRICS. So that's it. And Mr. Wonderful says 100% agree. So I think that's it for the night. Thank you all for coming. I hope you will return on for the Saturday show. I'm certain we will have more real good stuff about that. But also, okay, I hope you agree that these are fine, long streams and that we deserve a much larger audience than we have had. And thank you, Mr. Wonderful, for saying this was another great show. We certainly tried to make it so. And we will be back on Saturday for another one.
Yes, and I will be on tomorrow, Wednesday evening at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time to discuss basically where we're at with the situation.
And that will be very valuable too. Are you going to be on with Madeline tomorrow night?
No, I think I'm going to be by myself tomorrow night. If she does join in, if something goes on, she may join me at around 10 because she has I believe classes, whatever.
Yeah, she teaches until 10.
Well, about 9:30 or so at 10. Oh, so anyway, most likely I'll be by myself unless somebody wants to hop on with me. I'll just put the link. I did that last time when I was going to be by myself. I put the link in the chat. I just said whoever wants to join and could join. And that night, actually, Madeline joined around 10 when she was finished. So.
Okay, unfortunately, I won't be able to join. I have my daughter coming tomorrow for about a week.
Oh, how nice. Wonderful.
Yeah, that will be wonderful. But we're going to the airport to pick her up about 8 o'clock. And then, of course, we'll be talking with her animatedly for some hours, I'm sure. So,
I'm sure, yes.
So there
Should
it
be a
is.
lot of fun.
Yes. So anyway, everybody have a wonderful night and go to Dee's show tomorrow night. She's going to have a lot more good news about what's going on. I hope it's good news.
I hope it's good news, yes.
We need good news right now.
Yes.
We need,
And I also try to keep my eye on Gaza and the West Bank.
yes, and that's very, very important also. But hopefully, if there's good news about what's going on with Iran, that will project into Gaza.
And to me, what I said on my show the last time, I just say to Khomeini, the old saying that Ronald Reagan had said in history, tear down that wall. I'm like to Khomeini, to the wall
Yes,
in Gaza and the West Bank. Yeah, tear down that wall.
tear down that wall is great. But while you're at tearing down those walls, destroy those airfields.
Exactly.
And fly. That's the key.
Yes, that's the key. And that's what I've noticed he's been having the forces go to the airfields, especially the Nevatim one.
Yeah, I know. That's where the F-35s mostly fly out of.
Yes.
That was the Nevatim Air Base.
Yes.
So.
Yes, it's important.
That's pretty essential. So anyway, thank you very much, Dee, for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
It was a great pleasure.
Yes, and it was a great show, and you covered a lot, and I can't believe it's 12:30 already. I mean, the time does fly.
That was really good. It wasn't slow moving. So.
No, it's just so much information. It's just so much.
Yeah. So take care and have a great show tomorrow night.
Yeah, good night, Bonnie.
Good night. Okay, good night, Dee.
And good night, everybody, and free Palestine.
Yeah, thank you for coming, everybody. And please do share, like, and subscribe the thing so we get some people on YouTube. We really need people on YouTube. Got a lot of people coming in on Twitter and Facebook, but we need a much bigger audience on YouTube.
Right, even if you can subscribe to your channel would be great.
That would be great. I need many more subscriptions than I have. So thank you, everybody, and once again, good night.
Good night.
Good night.